Sheila, are we ready? Good evening. I'd like to call to order the regular Planning Commission for July 19th. It is now 6:04. Help on the Pledge of Allegiance from Commissioner Lambert.
Can't see the flag. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Staff, if we get a roll call, please.
Commissioner Fonda Bernardi.
Here.
Commissioner Fresco. Commissioner Lambert.
Here.
Commissioner Landris. Vice Chair Raskin.
Here.
Commissioner Tulkin.
Here.
Chairperson Reese.
Present. Moving on our agenda is item number 4 is a planning director's report.
All right, I will go ahead and provide the report from staff today. Sheila's pulling up the slide for that. Just taking a look at upcoming meetings for Planning Commission. We are going to be meeting next on August 16th. We have a development review permit for a creative office building at 1620 Euclid Street. We have an appeal of denial of signage at 1707 4th Street, scheduled for August 16th. And then we will be having the discussion regarding this commission's fiscal year, last fiscal year annual report and the work plan for the 2023-24 fiscal year. So that'll be presented on August 16th. September 6th, we've got a couple of alcohol service related items for 2525 Michigan and 3009 Main Street. And then looking ahead, we may schedule some other items in September, but in my look ahead, we've got the work plan priorities for the City Planning Division anticipated at the second meeting in September. And then also per the Commission's request, an earlier request, we do have a bike action plan update presentation from mobility staff anticipated for September 20th. And then in terms of City Council, last night's meeting was a rare meeting where we did not have any real city planning related items to report out from you other than commission appointments. Those were postponed to the August 22nd meeting. So we hope to get the update on this commission's composition then. And then in terms of looking ahead at City Council meetings, we have July 25th. We have an interim zoning ordinance proposal for the 3rd Street Promenade area to address economic recovery initiatives and also what would be the start of a potential entertainment district or providing some flexibility for uses in particular, the 1200 block of the 3rd Street Promenade. We also have an ordinance to establish local incentives for certain housing projects that were submitted before the certification of the sixth cycle housing element. And then on August 22nd, we have, led by the Code Enforcement Division, an ordinance establishing property maintenance and vacant property standards. That will be a good item for discussion for the council. And with that, I'd be happy to answer questions.
More of just a comment. I would say on the August 16th agenda for us, we might consider moving that Planning Commission annual report and work plan until we know what the composition of the commission is going to be.
That's true. I've been scooting this item outward, waiting for those appointments. We'll go ahead and see what happens.
And then on those appointments, I had heard maybe as recent as today that it was July 25th, but it's been pushed back another month officially.
I will double check that. We'll see. It just depends on attendance. So,
okay.
Thank you for raising that. I'll triple check.
No problem. Vice Chair Raskin has a question.
Yeah. So,
Hold on. Okay, Roxanne, Vice Chair Raskin has a comment for you.
Thanks. Yeah. So I remember that the City Council was supposed to take up the proposed ordinance regarding implementing the builder's remedy settlement Am I correct in understanding that was taken off calendar at the last meeting?
That's correct. That's scheduled for July 25th.
Commissioner Lambert.
I just thought of something. Have we heard anything back from HCD about the neighborhood commercial issue?
We have not.
Even informally?
No, we did submit the letter. HCD is in receipt of that, and we have not received formal feedback on it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your report. At this point, we'll go to commissioner announcements, and I'm going to start first with public speaking. If you want to speak tonight on any agenda item, we ask you to submit a chit in the back. It is a little small rectangular piece of paper that allows you to put down your name and what item you would like to speak on. And we're to urge you to do that now. You have up until the item starts to put in a speaker's slip. And then with that, I'll ask if there are any other announcements from commissioners. Not seeing any. Number 6 on our agenda is public input on items that are not on our agenda. So this would be if you're here to speak about something that is not specifically written onto our agenda but is of interest to you, this would be the appropriate time to get up and speak. I'm not seeing anybody moving on that. Yes, ma'am. No, wait, time. If you would like to speak, I'm going to need you to get up, come to the speaker's podium so everybody can hear you, and I'm going to need you to fill out a speaker slip. Okay, you still need to come up here. I can't really have a dialogue with you here, mainly because the public can't hear you. So you're going to get 3 minutes. You're going to get 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, my name's Gillian Saikon. I live in Santa Monica. This is the first one I've ever been to, so I'm not quite sure how this works, but this is about the public sidewalks, the crosswalks. So would this be the...
Well, you're going to have to tell us what your comment is, and then we'll try to see if we can...
So the street between Main and Olympic, the crosswalks there, people walk there regularly. It's right across the park, Tongva Park. The sidewalks, the crosswalk, the stripes have totally gone. And I've made a request several times to the city of Santa Monica to just have them painted. I noticed that they were painted right here, but they didn't continue all the way down to Ocean. So if you're trying to cross from the building that I live in across to Tongva Park, people don't even know it's a crosswalk.
Okay. So we're not that's not directly in our line. That's a more of a transportation issue, but city planning staff can put you in touch with the right transportation people, and they've also heard your comments tonight. I
sent a few emails over the last month or so, and I get a recognition that it's been received, but I don't get any response.
And you might copy the city council on those when you're putting in that referral to the code enforcement, because you should be directly going to code enforcement with that and copying city council, I think, and staff can give you any other direction either at a break. But what I'm going to also ask you to do, ma'am, is to please fill out a chit in the back for us on this item too, so we have a record of who spoke.
Okay, will do.
Thank you.
So this has nothing to do with the other issues on the agenda?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay. We're moving on in our agenda. I see nothing under consent calendar. We have no study sessions under number 8. We go to continued items number 9.
Chair Reese, I just wanted to go ahead and announce that the applicant is not present at this time. There was a mix-up on the start time. They believe the meeting started at 7, so we will need to, we cannot start the item without the applicant present, so we will need to propose a vote to reorder the agenda to hear 11A, or you may wait. We just can't start.
Okay, so just for the record, to make sure everyone heard that, we have an applicant who's integral to this public participation. They did not get their timing right, and they're showing up late. And I am perplexed by this as well. I mean, at a minimum, we have to move on with our agenda. The question is, have they lost their place on the agenda tonight? It's a 6 o'clock meeting. We have 6 o'clock meetings for since we've been back in person.
So this particular commission, the rules of order for this commission, it's at your discretion to pause the meeting until they arrive, or it's at your discretion with a 2/3 vote to reorder the agenda to hear item 11A before 9A. It's this commission's decision.
Okay, that didn't directly address my comment, which is, have they just lost their opportunity tonight?
No. No.
Commissioner Lambert?
I don't know about the rest of you, but I really want to get this behind me. The amount of staff time, commission time, and general time spent to these two units, I think, needs to come to an end tonight. And so I would move that we readjust the agenda so that 11A, is that right? Gets moved to the front.
Okay, so I think you would be seconding Commissioner Fonda Bernardi. So we now have a vote to move our agenda around so that 11A would be heard first, and then hopefully by the time we're done with that, 9A applicant would have showed up.
We have 9 people waiting for somebody who says that they didn't know the time job.
The public listen, I understand that this is awkward and uncomfortable, but I'm not in a position where I can have a dialogue with you about this. Okay? The best we can do tonight is postpone it until they come back, and then we'll go forward with the hearing. Again, this is not something we orchestrated or wanted to happen. This is life happened. So with that, we need a vote with staff. We need a vote, I guess 2/3 vote to move the agenda around.
Commissioner Fonda Bernardi.
Yes.
Commissioner Lambert.
Yes.
Vice Chair Raskin.
Yes.
Commissioner Tolkien.
Yes.
Chairperson Reese.
Yes. With that, we're going to move on with our agenda. Miss, I think what we're going to have to do is evaluate what happens when we're done with 11A. And if there's not an applicant here, then we have to have another discussion. The hope is by the time we get done with 11A, we have an applicant, we can start right away.
His agents are here, so,
His agents are here?
yeah.
Those are planning, ma'am, okay, ma'am, I can't, it's totally inappropriate to have a conversation like this. And that is city staff.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I know they look like they're undercover, but it's city staff. Okay, with that, can we please have 11A, and I think we need to start with ex partes. So Commissioner Fonda Bernardi, do you have any ex partes on this? No, he does not.
I've had several email communications with the applicant's representative, Mr. Kutcher.
Commissioner Raskin.
Yeah, I received an email from Mr. Kutcher inviting me to come visit the site. I informed Mr. Kutcher that I was acquainted with the site and the application, and an email that is substantially similar to that is in the record forwarded by Commissioner Landris.
Commissioner, ex parte for 11A, the PICO project. Okay. No, I was asked by the applicant's representative if I'd like to meet, and I did not, so that was my only interaction. With that, if we could have a staff report, we'd appreciate it.
Certainly. Good evening. My name is Grace Page, Acting Principal Planner, and tonight before you is a project proposal at 3402 Pico Boulevard. It captures 3 entitlements, a development review permit, a conditional use permit, and a tentative map. Just to give you some context with the site, this parcel outlined in red is the easternmost parcel on Pico Boulevard near the city boundary. So on the right-hand side, we have Centinela, with the shaded side being City of Los Angeles. The parcel is approximately 94,000 square feet in size. There is an existing 3-story office building, which will be retained as part of the project. And then there is a surface parking lot at the rear, in which the new proposed 2-story office building would be proposed. The site is interesting in that, or unique, that it has 3 frontages, 34th Street being the longest one. A portion of the project site is also fronting on Pico at the top corner here, and Centinela to the right side. Uniquely, the parcel is also adjacent to a Caltrans easement. This triangular shaped parcel here at grade. And then above it is the 10 freeway overpass. In the next photos, you can kind of see in the aerial view here, here's the project site, the existing building, the surface parking lot. And then in terms of what you may see from the street, in this upper corner, you'll see a picture of the building as you may view from that intersection of 34th and Pico. And then from Centinela, this is what you would see, the surface parking lot, the back of the existing building, the Caltrans easement, and then the overpass on the right. In terms of the overall project description, the project proposal being the 2-story office building, it's 2 stories, 30 feet in height. It's intended for creative business professional offices. Again, the existing building, office building would remain. The new building is approximately 48,000 square feet. It contains 3 levels of subterranean parking, which includes 242 spaces. There are 30 bicycle parking spaces. The 24 are long-term and 6 are short-term. The Architectural Review Board did hold a preliminary discussion, and we can go over those comments in a bit. Secondly, it requires a conditional use permit because office use in the mixed-use Boulevard Low requires a conditional permit, is not permitted by right. And so the Planning Commission would consider if this use is compatible with the context of the site and the existing neighborhood. And lastly, there's a tentative vesting parcel map being requested. The current site is pieced with 5 different parcels. Some of them are tied to each other. And it's just a way to merge the lots and to create one uniform site instead of 5 irregularly shaped lots. We'll start out with the development review permit. A development review permit is required to be reviewed by the Planning Commission in this particular case because the project is more than 15,000 square feet. That threshold requires their review. Again, there are 3 levels of subterranean parking garage. This would all be accessed from Centinela. The bottom is on the left-hand side, the middle level here, and then the first level of parking here. The first level of parking contains the long-term bicycle parking spaces as well as showers and lockers. There's a bank of elevators that are near there, so if someone were to commute on bike, it would be easy to access those spaces. Some of those parking spaces, as you can see, are in tandem arrangement, so there would be an attendant on site that would need to be able to organize and facilitate those spaces. Let's see. In terms of the floor plan, the building has a linear shape. It runs along the Caltrans easement, and then also a second bar that runs along the southern portion of the site. The first floor is approximately 23,000 square feet of divisible office space, and then the second, similarly, about the same floor area. The second floor does have an outdoor terrace that looks inward, and also a small outdoor terrace area as common space for as an amenity. And then on the right-hand side is the roof plan. You can see that there's solar being proposed as well as mechanical equipment enclosure, but there is no occupiable space on the roof here. So in terms of what would this project look like, it depends on how much you can actually see of the project. So for example, on the left-hand side, this is a rendering as you travel on Centinela. You see the overpass here, and then you can see the project proposed on this image here. On the right-hand side is if you were traveling on Pico and heading under the underpass. Because of that Caltrans easement, this building is set back quite a bit, and you would get a glimpse just between, the column, between the wall and the top of the overpass. And then on Centinela, that would be the most visible portion from the public right-of-way. This is a rendering superimposed with the existing context of the streetscape. So the overpass on the right side, some bungalow residential units, and then a 3-story multi-residential project. While not required to provide for open space, the project does have a theme for being the Pico Green office project. They're really trying to add a courtyard component here with lush landscaping. And as you can see on the left-hand side, there's quite a bit of buffering landscaping on the edge here, as well as the adjacent residential properties here to the south, and also wrapping around the corner of the building. On the right-hand side is an image of what it may look like if you were standing in the courtyard looking towards the new building. Again, the conditional use permit is to make sure that the proposed use, an expansion or new addition of office space wouldn't interfere with the use and enjoyment of the property or the surrounding properties. And just to give you some context, this office building and use was established in 1969. It doesn't have a history of issues related to any code enforcement related things to office, the use itself. The new office building is landscaped. It's got the outdoor courtyard component. The building itself will create a physical buffer and add greenery to this site. On-site parking is replaced for the surface parking lot, and additional parking that is not required is also being included as part of the project. All that circulation of vehicles coming in and out of the site will now be below grade and not something that happens at grade. Again, the tentative parcel map, the request is really just to solidify these 5 parcels into one uniform lot outlined in red. In terms of compliance with the general plan and the zoning ordinance, there are land use element goals related to economy and to facilitate growth of creative related businesses, supporting the continued viability of existing office uses. Those are folded into the applicant's proposal. There's also goals and policies about design as it relates to commercial projects adjacent to residential buildings. So we're looking at building envelopes, setbacks, buffering, landscaping. Conformance with the zoning ordinance, we're looking at the development standards in terms of height, FAR. The project complies with the tier 1 level of projects. And so it's not any taller or higher than the base project standards. Office is a conditionally permitted use. All the access points are available and utilities for the site. There are some pedestrian enhancements on Centinela where there aren't really any. Now there's going to be some landscaping, there would be some lighting, and some, a street wall that creates like a sense of entry, and occupied physical presence. Staff reviewed the project and looked at the CEQA and did an environmental analysis. There is documentation supporting the exemption of 15183.3. That is attached in your staff report as attachment D. There was a variety of public correspondence as required, so public notices were mailed to property owners and tenants within a 750 radius. There was a notice in the Santa Monica Daily Press. The on-site sign postings were required on 3 sides because of the 3 street frontages. They had to have 1 on each. The applicant held a community meeting October 3rd of 22. Staff received 10 items of public correspondence, which are all attached on the agenda, 2 of which were from the applicant, and others were in support of the project, and others had concerns. The concerns varied from anything related to pedestrian orientation on 34th Street as it relates to some of the trash enclosures that are placed there, concerns related to any types of noise related, whether it be music or noise from equipment like transformers. And then also some general comments related to traffic in the general area, particularly during rush hour, and concerns of 242 parking spaces, meaning additional vehicles in the area. I do want to point out that the statement of official action that was drafted was revised. It has been updated on the agenda. There are copies also available in the back of the room for those that want to see it in person here. And I just want to go over what was changed. The expiration of the development review permit and the conditional use permit applications were revised to accurately reflect a 4-year term of validity. And that's because we had an ordinance in place when this project was filed. We revised condition number 2 to reflect that appropriate expiration date. Condition number 74, pertaining to off-site work related to street and alley improvements, was actually removed and eliminated. There was also removal of some duplicative conditions. The wording was the same, but the number was different. And then lastly, the final map conditions for the applicant to require them to file a final map were missing, so those were included, and they are the standard conditions. So in terms of recommendation from staff, we're requesting that that the Planning Commission consider approval of the DRP, the CUP, the map, and the statement of official action as revised.
Let's see if we have questions for staff at this moment. Commission, Vice Chair Raskin.
Forgive me, but I missed whether you revised the condition about the telecommunications guidelines. Did you also update that one?
That one was maintained. There were no changes to that.
So the applicant has alleged that there are no such guidelines. Is that correct?
I'm not aware of if those are available to staff.
The way this condition is drafted, if there are guidelines in place, then the applicant will need to comply with them. If there's not, then there is not a need for compliance.
So that's a just-in-case condition? Okay, very good. Any other questions right now? Okay, thank you very much, staff. I'm sure we'll have more comments after we hear from the applicant and potentially the community. So if we can get now the applicant to come up and give their presentation. You'll have 15 minutes followed up by public comment and then an opportunity to rebut for, I believe, 3 minutes.
Let me see. Got it. Oh, literally a laser.
So when you get started, when you're ready to go, just give us your name and then jump in.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, Commissioners, Grace, for the intro and explanation. My name is Mark Hirschman, and I'm representing the applicant tonight. I'm also joined by Ken Kuchar and Chris Torres. Ken Kuchar is our land use consultant, and Chris is our landscape architect. Probably hear more from moral support than anything else, but if any questions happen to go that direction, we're here as well.
Sir, you are unlike me. You sound very soft-spoken, so what I'd like to do is make sure you're speaking into the mic so that
Sure.
the public hears you outside. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. So I do want to thank, again, Grace, for taking you through a lot of the sort of key points of the project. I'm going to concentrate a bit more maybe on the architecture and a little bit more about why we did what we did with this presentation. So hopefully we'll see how that goes. As we explained, we are the most eastern site within Santa Monica. We're located relatively in a good position as it relates to public transit. Lots of bike lanes. You can see I don't know if you can, I'm sorry. Our site's right in the center here, so we're by some major bus stops. We have bike lanes around and then also a metro stop as well. I won't re-go through the numbers that she went through, but essentially we have a building that's existing building about 47,000 square feet with a new building of approximately the same size. So we'll have a new gross area on the side of about 95,000 square feet. I think one thing to note about this particular project and our client is the landlord in this case is an end user, and their company is a company which acquires and is a startup themselves when they became about green energies. Right now they're housing two companies in the existing building, Inspire and CCR. Both of those are concentrated on green technologies. Inspire actually was just recently sold to Shell, though still will be operating as part of their own green initiative. The other group is a company specifically specifies and works in the solar energy capacity. And if you're familiar with the existing building, you'll notice that it's completely enveloped with PV panels. And this project, as well as we're able to do so with all the mechanical systems, they do want to take advantage of that roof plane as well. We did talk about the parking. There are 242 parking that will ultimately be proposed. It does sound like a large number. Also, it's subterranean, which frankly, if we weren't asked to do that by the client, we would all probably not want to do it. But based on just still market demands, and then understanding also that we're not just parking for the new 47,000 square feet, but also the existing building. If we were going by a few months ago, before we started putting parking maximums, let's say in Santa Monica, we'd be looking at, I believe, if I'm not misspeaking, I want to say we were going to need 320 something parking. So we're certainly well below that, but we do understand that all the subterranean parking it's a burden, it's expensive, and something we have to deal with, unfortunately. Just a little bit about the site analysis in the building and what our sort of goals were as an architect, and just starting from where we start, if you will. The obvious biggest constraint about our building, at least in our minds, is the freeway. The freeway is above us, it's loud, it's full of pollutants, and so our strategy for deciding the building was to actually let the building sort of be a buffer, if you will, against that freeway, then open it up to an activated courtyard, which the existing tenant in the building already do have that, but to further engage that, and then let the building, again, act as a buffer to our residential friends to the south. As a massing strategy, we started with basically the mass of the site that we had, which before the sites were combined, we had about 42,000 square feet of site. Obviously, we want to put a big flat building there, so the first thing we did was hollow out the center to create that connection within the courtyard. We then took the building, and again, to create that buffer, we wanted to move it actually towards the freeway. By doing that, on the second floor, we were able to create usable outdoor space. And so we created these balconies, but they're not balconies that are little walkways. They're actually 15 feet deep. So they start to become actual usable spaces, an extension potentially of the rooms within to now become indoor-outdoor spaces. With that, we then also wanted to split the second floor. As we were designing this, a lot of this design inception was coming right through the end of COVID. And it was asked by the client would it be possible that you could circulate throughout the building without ever having to go indoors? And though maybe that was an extreme idea at the time, it actually could be quite pleasant. And with only a 2-story building, we sort of took the L portion, if you will, and slid it across, at least conceptually, so that one can get to anywhere on the second floor without really having to go inside. And also keeping in mind that the building's being designed as a incubator, if you will, for other small companies that they're starting. We wanted to keep the floor plates not really deep, but also allow, good natural light from either side while still maintaining the buffer against the freeway. So as we look at a glazing diagram, there's a couple things. Also, our proximity to property lines for fire life safety, we could have a certain amount of openings, but also maybe at the same time, and more importantly, if you look at the picture on the right, you'll notice that we only have up to 40% glazing, and that's along the freeway. This is just a diagram. It wasn't really compressed here, but just trying to explain at our time to our client that, this is how much glass we'd like to have on the northern facing to protect against the freeway. But we want to open it up as much as we can inward into the courtyard. Again, as our second floor approaches our neighbors, we open that up completely, but on the ground floor, we limit that as well. It's probably also important to note that our neighbors are actually us. In other words, the owner also owns this parcel of bungalows, which they recently rehabbed about 4 years ago. So part of another sort of initiative is, as they're starting these companies and cutting down that transportation footprint, could they actually start to house people within the bungalows that they have, so that the proximity, there could potentially be this melding of the two. But that's something that they'll have to see how it goes once the building's complete. But it's something that definitely was on our mind through the design. As far as design opportunities and what we were concentrating on, it's really important for us at Shubin Donaldson sort of as a design ethos, but also to align ourselves with clients that have similar likes. And one of that, and bringing Chris into the mix as well, is really integrating landscape deeply into our designs, not superficial, but to have it really integrate within the architecture itself. So that's something that was really important to us. Also, the embracing of this wellness or the greenness, and because of the types of companies that the excuse me, that the client operates within, we wanted to look to some alternative, maybe not totally alternative in Pacific Northwest, but still around here. But we are looking at CLT hybrid construction. So right now, just with the code, we only have a 2-story building. Yes, we're concrete subterranean, but we are looking to have CLT floor membranes with steel substructure. So trying to move towards renewable resources within the building construction itself. And then also just as a initiative for ourselves and just trying to be better neighbors, right now, if you know the building, all of the building access comes off of 34th Street. They drive down the alley and it's a surface parking lot where our building's proposed. Grace mentioned this, but just want to make sure we understand we're trying to no longer use the 34th Street. It'll still just be used for infrequent loading zone, and trash pickup will still be there. But we're moving all of the in and out vehicular traffic to the Centinela side to try and mitigate some of the traffic that might be on 34th Street. These are just context views. I'll move through them quickly since you've seen them already. Some views from the site as we know it today. Just as a very simple diagram, there's a few different ways to get up and down the building from the parking, but it should be mentioned that this DOT owns this, and there's a long-term lease from our client from them. I think it's DOT, I might be saying that wrong, but it's one of the transportation companies. But they have additional surface parking up here, and then there's a parking connector that'll come down into the plaza. This existing plaza will remain intact, but our new design will sort of incorporate into that. And working with Chris and also just sort of our idea about this is, you know, we start with the building that we have, which is very orthogonal, the existing building, and limited by what our opportunities might be on the triangular site. We wanted to sort of take that hard edge along the freeway, but internally we really wanted to soften it up and almost create a mini parklet, if you will, and part of that is to create very usable spaces, right, that are within the courtyard, so that we can almost think of them as outdoor rooms to move some of that livelihood and actually getting the work done with technology the way that we can. Why not move it out to the courtyard instead of the building itself? This is sort of a realization of taking that initial sketch and putting it into a site plan. And then a rendering. And now I'm just going to take you through a few views. This is a shot from the existing building on the second floor looking at the new construction down into the courtyard. Same shot at night. At night, you know, it's an office building. It's not really meant, you know, for nightlife. We have neighbors and such. But if folks are there, we want to make sure that the light levels are very dim, but still intimate. So if folks are there, that they can still feel secure within the space. This is a shot from the new building itself. Now we're looking back to the west towards the existing building. We're on the second floor, one of the second floor terraces. And this is from the existing ground floor courtyard looking into the new courtyard, into the new building beyond. This view is on the second floor of the existing building, looking at the sort of triangular point at how the new building would end. And you can see the second story terrace that's then also protected from the freeway. That's to the left side. One thing to note, I'm showing you a lot of interior images first before the exterior, and this building really was designed sort of inside looking out. we're very limited in the actual elevational views that we have from the different streets. And we were okay with that idea and really wanted to create a building that was inward faced and created a creative campus for our client. However, we do have elevations on the street as well. And we are trying to be, we wanted to make sure that we take advantage of only using 2 stories and creating a nice lofty space that our client was looking for. At the same time, we wanted to be respectful of ourselves in this case, but our residential neighbors, and pushing the second floor back away from those folks as much as possible. This is the view that you saw already from Grace. And just an elevational view with us in relation to our neighbors to the south. In this shot, as you can see, the CMU wall there that actually divides Pico from the DOT is about 7.5 feet tall, so it's quite private. And then you'll just see our building in the distance. And that's it for the presentation.
Great. Thank you very much. Let's see if we have questions for you right now. Anybody have questions? Commissioner Fonda Bernardi, I'll start with.
Okay. First of all, I like what you did on the south edge, pulling the building back those 15 feet and then pulling the second story back even farther. I think that's very respectful of the building there. But I do have a couple of questions. Is the freeway higher than your building, or it looks like it's at the same level, but the freeway is not flat. The freeway is going up, I believe, at that point.
The freeway is actually, it's getting higher as it goes east in that particular position. Our building is much lower. It's about 8 feet lower than the existing building. The existing building was a 3-story building, well, 2.5, because if you know the history of that building, its first floor was originally parking, and they converted that into additional office space at some point. So we're in this and if you're familiar driving and looking to the south when you're on the freeway, you can sort of just read the edge. You know, you're kind of looking at the windows and the top edge of the existing building. Our building is lower, so we tried to do renderings from the freeway. It's so oblique, it's almost like a plane. So where it ends up is probably the top of buildings around that. You know, our freeways have a guardrail out of concrete, so once you're seeing over that horizon, you're actually, it's oblique. You're just looking at the top edge of the building. There's no, you can't look down too much, and there's not a view to see per se.
Okay. So a couple of other questions. Is the central courtyard open to the public?
It is not intended to be at this point. It still is a private building.
Okay. Is the trash enclosure have a roof on it?
It is not. The existing does not, and we were not necessarily planning to. No, we're taking the same enclosure and growing it a bit. So at this point, it is not intended to.
Okay. And then it seems like you're kind of skimped, particularly for the client that you have. You kind of skimped on the roof PV. It seems like it's a tiny area of your whole building that's available there compared to the other building.
I want to show you, I hear what you're saying. I just want to, I'm going to zip through. I don't know that we resent out, and I'm sorry we're late to the game.
Those aren't the plans that we've seen.
This is literally updated today, because when I was looking with my team, what had happened was we had it when we sent out the application to you. It was the older roof plan. Okay. This is the current, and further to mention, and I was like, that's odd, but we're at 151 kVA right now, so it's a relatively substantial amount, and I can assure you that our client wants to maximize that. Mm-hmm. It's also good. It's a good narrative, and it's good just vision for their own companies.
So we will be approving these plans.
Yes, you would.
Not the ones that we were sent earlier.
Correct. And the only thing this is the only sheet at all that was changed out, because I missed it, frankly, when my team put the other one in that was originally submitted to you all. This is the only sheet that changed.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Commissioner Lambert?
I have a follow-up question to Mario's question about the open space. I mean, it would be wonderful if it were open to the community, but I imagine there are security issues.
Essentially, that is what it is. It is still privately held companies, and they have to have security around the property. I would imagine, knowing them, it could be open for certain events. They may have special events, particularly fundraisers, things of that nature, but I do not believe that they plan to operate it day to day as a open
I
park.
understand. But whatever fencing there is will be transparent, right?
Always.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I had a couple of questions. So on your parking count, I heard a couple of things. One is that you were at 242, maybe there was a requirement for 327 or something, but the plans I saw, there was a requirement for 215. Is that just for the new build, was the 215?
Yeah, and so to be clear, let me kind of restate. It would never need to be 320 whatever again. What I was suggesting is if the building was built from scratch now, the existing building and the new building, and we were to take it at the old ratio of one parking for every 300 square feet that was in effect when we actually started the design, we would have to be at that 320 spaces. That's actually not the way that it works, and Ken can probably help me out, but what we have to do is we have to honor the existing parking that was there, and then we have to add at 3 per 1,000. We used to have to add the 3 parking per 1,000 from before, and that's how we got to the previous necessity for the minimum parking. Through this process, those minimums went away, now we have maximums. So then we've stuck with what our original design intent was, and also because of the requirements, we call it the requirements, the necessity to make the project viable for our ownership, we're trying to keep it at that 242, which is still substantially less than what it would be if it were a new building not designed in the last 6 months. It's weird.
Yeah, but now
Sorry,
we have
we're in a
AB,
weird spot.
now we have AB 2097 and the world is burning up. So we would really like to limit the amount of cars. And I would push you hard to make sure that this is the most the minimum you need, because I look at you needed, according to the staff report, you needed 215, you're at 242. I was hoping we could cut you down a little bit, and then the next question I wanted to ask is, how much of that is going to be above and beyond the EV parking requirements? I mean, I'd be more comfortable providing more EV parking spaces, but I'm going to assume that for right now, you're going to come in and just say we're going to provide code.
Right now, we're going to come in and provide code. That's it. It's a high code to start with. I would also say, right now, if you're on their site, they're parked well above code with their EV, again, with their own green initiative and incentives. Part of it, frankly, is that the limitations of how much power we can bring in. As you know, I mean, the EV charging takes a tremendous amount of electrical power, particularly the high-speed stuff. This is also an office building. It's not residential. If it was residential, I'd be coming and pushing for a completely different agenda. The idea is we're trying to, when we work on multifamily and just on our projects in general, to have folks charge their cars overnight and to relinquish that burden on the office projects so that they're not having to bring in these ginormous transformers to offset what the codes are asking for. So I from both sides, I completely hear where you're coming from, though.
Okay, then can you talk to me about the relationship of your access to the freeway drive across you're moving the access on to Centinela, and how does that interplay with the freeway access across the way?
Well, we would hope that it's actually it's a better serving entrance because it's coming off. In other words, instead of bringing people down 34th, which is a much slower pedestrian-oriented street.
I totally agree with that. My only question in my head is I haven't seen any graphics that show me where your driveway is in relation to the freeway access.
Literally to the freeway axis.
Across the way.
We're a right turn in, right turn out. There's a median there. So as far as, and we didn't do any sort of traffic study just due to the CEQA, but just based on sort of, I don't want to say common sense, but basic logic, how you might use the space, someone can't jut out and then get over there. They're still going to have to follow the laws to get to the space. I'm sure we could provide some sort of an exhibit to show that real proximity. It just wasn't on our radar, I guess. I would say to show that.
Which is interesting because that was a pretty big issue of concern the last time this site came before the Planning Commission, that proximity. So I guess what we're saying is you're going to take a right out of the site you're either going to go all the way down to Ocean Park and make a left, or you're going to try to make a U-turn at Pearl so that you can get back to the park, to the freeway.
If you were headed eastbound, yeah. Well, I guess east or westbound, but I don't even know if Pearl's a U-turn street.
It wouldn't be, well, no, I guess you probably could. It's not commercial. Anyways, I just think that has some traffic concerns.
Understood.
Talk to me about, from a landscape perspective, you have all that open space on top of parking, surface, on your subterranean. So what kind of depths are you looking at in your planters, and how big of trees?
So if you, I'm going to go back to the renderings, and Chris can help me out a little bit with the details of the tree sizes. But we're trying to be pretty smart about this. We understand the realities of you need a certain soil depth to grow a mature tree, as well as the structural reinforcement below. If you, maybe I should get one that's not at night. Let me see if I can give you, bear with me one sec. This is a good shot. So what we're doing is we're creating first a 24-inch berm, if you will, to start our initial soils. And this is done for two reasons. One, obviously, to build up the minimum soils. We're not going to have 24 inches, I can assure you, on the perimeter, that we'd use a lot of foam there. But what it does do is it allows us to have tree wells where we do need. It's slowly mounding up. So at the point where the mature trees will be placed, we're going to have over 5 feet of soil depth to allow those to bear properly. At the same time, what it's doing is it's creating these sort of visual buffers that allow for these sort of inner spaces at the same time.
Well, that's a very good answer. You put a lot of thought into that. 5 feet's a lot of soil depth. Yep. To play along with my narrative, I would have appreciated if you weren't at 5 feet and you sunk those down deeper into the parking area and lost a couple of parking spaces. But I see that you guys at least addressed the concern of making sure you have 5 feet, a good 5 feet of depth.
Thank you.
And then on your roof plan, have you sent that to staff tonight?
Ken, did we send that to staff? Yes, we did.
Thank you very much. Those are my comments, questions for right now. I see Commissioner Lambert with another one.
I just have a follow-up. I had the same issue about parking, and I discussed it with Mr. Kutcher. Can you tell me how you came up with the 242 spaces? If not, I can tell you what he told me.
What did he tell you?
Cross-reference their info.
Basically, it was the input of a commercial real estate broker that in order to rent the spaces, you had to have that many spaces.
Sorry,
otherwise you would have vacant space.
Sorry, I thought you meant how did we get to that exact number, 242? So, yes, overall, and unfortunately, this isn't this broker, it's still all brokers. Brokers are still advising their clients. Not everyone's caught up with, if they want to rent space, particularly in this market, they need to be parking at a minimum of 3 per 1,000. They'll really tell them they should be at 4 or 5. We know that most of our municipalities are trying to bring that way down, and we're all trying to find alternative means. And us as architects, we're not really interested in that stuff either, for multiple reasons. Frankly, because we're spending so much money on subterranean parking, we can't actually design great buildings. It's frustrating. But unfortunately, we don't get to build the building at all if there's not the economic means to support it once it's built.
You answered my question. So. And again, to repeat, this is a great deal less than what the old code would have required you to provide.
Yes, that's correct.
And it's less than 3 per 1,000.
Much less.
Yes. And then from the standpoint of access to the freeway, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you turn right on Centinela and head toward Ocean Park Boulevard, there is a point before that where you can turn left onto the freeway.
I'm going to honestly say I don't recall in this meeting, so I don't want to misspeak.
Which is really stupid. But there is a way to get right on Centinela, and then you turn left before Ocean Park Boulevard and get on the freeway.
That's probably
Trust me.
true, and I'm going to drop. Okay, I will.
How is it that the applicant team doesn't know that?
They don't live here.
Seems important.
We don't.
You can look on Google Earth and see for yourself.
I know it from personal experience, so. Anyway,
Fair
thank
enough.
you.
Yep.
So I have one last question, if I may. The parking lot where the building is going is currently being used, right? It's being used by the existing.
But by the existing building, that's correct.
And where's that parking going during construction?
So luckily, because they rent the DOT parking that's under the freeway, they're offsetting. I think we have approximately 70 spaces there. 62 spaces, so that's where a majority of that will go.
Okay.
Right, you can park in the aisles of that as well. So it's very wide. It's a very robust parking. It's not a skimpy parking, so there's plenty of room to park there.
Okay, looks like we have one more question for you down here. Commissioner Gilpin.
There were a couple of issues by neighbors about the trash collection area. Could there have been a little bit more buffer between that and then your neighbors to the south? I mean, landscape buffer. I mean, there's nothing wrong with a block wall, but I mean, if you're looking directly at it.
Well, I mean, what I would say is this: that particular side of the site is pretty constrained with the inlet that's already there. Also, that we need to get fire access along that plane and turn around for loading, all coming off of that same area. What we did is we took the existing trash that was there and grew it, but we didn't grow it any more further, I don't believe, more close to our condos that are to our neighbors. We went parallel with where we are, and it's already relatively buffed, I mean, visually, in its existing condition.
Was that serving the existing building as well as the new building?
It's been increased to service both. In its existing capacity, it's only for the existing building, but we've taken that same footprint and enlarged it.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that's the end of our questions right now. Let's see if we have any public comment. And we don't have any public comment, so it's your opportunity to rebut that public comment and give us any other thoughts you have, or
Please.
let Ken say one thing.
Good evening, Ken Kutcher on behalf of the applicant. I just wanted to acknowledge staff's efforts to address our concerns with respect to the conditions of approval, and generally satisfied. As indicated in my letter, I've asked for these telecommunication guidelines multiple times. I've quit asking, so I didn't check this week to find out if there are any. I don't believe there are, and I don't care if it's in there or not, frankly. We have a vesting map. If they're not in place, by the date that map application was deemed complete, they can't apply it to us. I'm not worried about it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, with that, I think we are going to close the public hearing and turn it to commission discussion. Are there any commissioners who want to start the discussion? Okay, Commissioner Fonda-Bernardi.
Well, I would like to move things along and suggest that we approve this. I'd like a motion to approve. Roxanne?
We have to go through.
Okay, no, I think you can do it all in one, so you can just list off everything. It'll be you're motioning to approve the CEQA guidelines, the CEQA exemption,
Release.
approve.
Roxanne?
Didn't know you were going to move so quickly. I wanted to add one follow-up on the STOA revisions that Grace outlined for you. Just for the record, we want to make one particular comment clear. With respect to the removal of the original condition 74, that was done not just based at the applicant's request. A question was raised for us to look at that in conjunction with another condition that was similar, that it is provided in the record here. We did do that analysis, and based on, specifically, we removed that condition original 74 based on the location of the proposed access along the site, being along Centinela, and also the lack of adjacent alleyways to the project. It does not appear that the condition that we did remove would actually apply. There is another public works condition that remains in place addressing the need for off-site improvements generally.
Okay. Well, in that case, my motion includes removing condition 74 and also that the current submitted solar roof plan is included in our approval.
Okay. So just for the record, we are approving the CEQA exemption, the development review permit, the conditional use permit, and the vesting tentative track map. And with the statement official actions, there were modifications shown to us up here, which you're agreeing to. and then you're adding in the updated roof plan that shows more solar. And that, I believe, is your motion.
Right.
Looking for a second.
Second.
Great. We have a first and a second. Is there any discussion? Commissioner Raskin, Vice Chair Raskin.
Yeah, just one point for the record. I mean, I think that we all are on the same page that this project is yet another example of what a blight the freeway is in our community. And I hope we can all continue to move forward with removing the freeway as a policy priority over the next decade or so.
Okay, and my comment is that was a very well-designed project, and I look forward to that central park, and I hope it is as green and lush as you're showing in this spot. With that, I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Fonda Bernardi,
Yes.
Commissioner Lambert.
Yes.
Vice Chair Raskin,
Yes.
Commissioner Tolkien,
Yes.
Chairperson Reese.
Yes. The action passes, that project moves forward, and we thank you very much for your time. We'll move on to our next agenda item, which I think in this case is we'll go back to, is it 9A? And I did see the architect walk in.
He's here. I just told him to.
Okay. So we have an applicant, and we can actually move forward with the hearing, which I'm sure everyone will appreciate. Yeah, let's start with, while we're waiting, why don't we start with, does anybody have any ex parte communications on this? And I'll start with Commissioner Lambert.
I met with the applicant and his architect last Tuesday at the site at 10 a.m. And I have since been out there a couple times myself just to walk street and look at the site.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Tolkien.
I got a couple of phone calls from Diane Miller. I guess she was a planning commissioner at one point? No?
She was a commissioner in the city, but not a
plan.
Not a plan.
Okay. Well, anyway, she asked me to meet with them, but I couldn't, so.
Okay. So, Commissioner Fonda Bernardi?
Yeah, I spoke with the architect today for about 20 minutes at noon.
Okay, great. Vice Chair Raskin.
Yeah, well, first of all, I think we all want to incorporate the disclosures we made back before February 17th, 2021. I can't recall exactly what they are at this time, but I will incorporate whatever ex partes I disclosed at that time. That being said, I did do a site visit with Mr. Metro on July 6th. I've had a few conversations with Frank Angel about this project over the past year. I've had a few phone conversations with Mr. Metro about it, and I met the property owner on the July 6th site visit.
And my ex parte is Ms. Miller also called me and talked to me about her support for the project. The architect reached out to me to meet, but my schedule did not permit it. And then I was at the hearing the last time I was here. So those are my disclosures. I think we can move forward. So with this, we'll turn to staff.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Ross Furman, Senior Planner for the City of Santa Monica. And tonight I'm here to present the proposed project located at 1665 Appian Way. As a quick reminder, and most of you already just recalled, the project did come before this commission back in February of 2021. So the project before you is a development review permit, a variance, a major modification, and a vesting tentative parcel map to allow for a new Tier 2 two-unit condominium development. In order to accommodate the proposed project, a variance is requested to allow for a reduction of the front setback from 30 feet to 15 feet, which is a setback specific to the only to the walk streets of Arcadia and Seaview Terrace. Additionally, a major modification to allow a 9.2%, which is about 100 square feet reduction to the required 25% minimum planting area. And it's also important to note that based on the project design, approval of the proposed development review permit, major modification, and parcel map are contingent on approval of the proposed variance. So to give you a little context, the project site is located in the medium density residential or R3 zone district and also the beach overlay district and consists of a single parcel that is approximately 4,414 square feet in size. The parcel is located on the corner of Appian Way and Pacific Terrace, with the front of the parcel located on Arcadia Terrace Walk Street, one of the 3 walk streets in Santa Monica. Development along Arcadia Terrace generally consists of single and multi-unit developments, with some commercial being located at the eastern end of the walk street. Construction along this walk street dates between 1912 and 1998, with only one parcel having been developed within this last century, which is actually the parcel immediately to the east of the project site, which received building permits back in 2017. Additionally, it should be noted that there's a walk and park easement that exists along Arcadia Terrace that requires that all properties provide a 15-foot easement from the center line of the walkway, which can only be abandoned or used for any other purposes at the consent of all the property owners. The easement essentially requires that 5 feet be used for walking purposes and the remaining 10 for park purposes. To give you a little background, the parcel was originally developed in 1914 with a 4-unit residential building, which has since been approved for demolition. And after a lengthy landmark designation review, the existing structure was ultimately determined to not be eligible for landmark designation. It's also important to note that the proposed application is not subject to SB 330 because the application was deemed complete back in 2016, so it predates SB 330 and the cleanup of SB 8. So just wanted to bring that clarification to you all. So as we mentioned, back in February 17th of 2021, the proposed project was reviewed by the commission, but was ultimately continued in cooperation with the applicant in order to provide the applicant an opportunity to revise the project, as the commission was not able to make the necessary findings at that time in order to approve the requests and entitlements. During that hearing, the commission provided the following discussion topic and comments that you can see on the screen. There was discussion regarding if this property should even be considered part of the actual walk street, since it is located before the access gate. However, there was some documentation at that hearing provided that access gate had not always existed in that location. There was discussion about the high pedestrian volume street, that Appian Way is a high pedestrian volume street, and there was unpredictable circulation behavior for vehicles. There was concern that the building's orientation was to Appian Way when it should maybe be to Arcadia Terrace, which is the actual front. There was also discussion of maybe a parking variance being more appropriate than the front the front setback. And then also there was just general comments and concerns that the design was not responsive to the Architectural Review Board comments at the preliminary review. Subsequent to that hearing, the applicant did revise some of the design, as you can see in the plans that were provided you for tonight's hearing. They did address such comments that by reducing the western facade's exposure and refining some of the building materials. However, these design changes did not change the actual overall proposal and the need for the variance and major modification. Those 2 items still stay very much the same. And for those reasons, and as I will detail more in the staff report and later on this presentation, staff will be continuing to recommend denial of the project for those reasons, as the proposal has not changed back from 2021. So to go over a couple of the project details, so it is a Tier 2 project, which is due to the height of 40 feet and 3 stories being above the baseline Tier 1. Tier 1 would be a 30-foot height and only 2 stories, so them exceeding those kicks them into the Tier 2 requirements. The total size of the project is 5,424 square feet, which is divided between 2 units. The 2 units are roughly 2,200 square feet for the 3-bedroom and 2,561 square feet for the 2-bedroom unit. There are going to be 7 bicycle parkings provided, and also 4 parking spaces in a kind of a semi-subterranean parking garage that is accessed off of Appian Way. The project was designed to have its main facade be along Appian Way, even though Arcadia Terrace is considered the front of the parcel. The project was designed to incorporate only a 15-foot front setback, as the plans show that are provided to you tonight, which you can kind of see. It's kind of hard to see, but this is where the 15 feet would be is located, where the original 30 feet would be this red dashed line right here. Additionally, as shown in the elevation image, the third floor is set back beyond the second floor. This was done to comply with both the required daylight plane and the additional upper story step back requirement that any story above the second floor has to be set back an additional average 10 feet. However, both of those daylight plane and the additional setback are very much tied to the proposed front setback distance being measured from 15 feet instead of 30. So as required for a development review permit application, this project did go to the Architecture Review Board for a preliminary review back in October of 2020. Overall, the ARB did express support for the design, however, did provide the following observations or recommendations: that the facade, the elevations were three-dimensional, and the design should be considered furthered and developed. The western facade appears to be overexposed. So this image on the screen was the original proposal seen by ARB. The building design should be more holistic, with facades relating more to one another, that the project appears very solid and friendly to the pedestrian, and that ultimately the upper unit, so the third floor, is out of proportion and scale with the rest of the building, as the first two floors, I believe, around 10 feet, where the third floor is 17, I believe. So there is a larger third floor that was basically used to accommodate a mezzanine that is being proposed on the third floor. So getting into why staff is recommending denial of this project. In order to approve the requested variance to reduce the front setback from 30 feet to 15, all required findings must be made. As outlined and in more detail in the staff report and in the draft STOA, after review of the subject parcel and the surrounding context of Arcadia Terrace specifically, staff recommends denial of the proposed variance based on the inability to make all of the findings that would support variance approval. Specifically, the findings related to special circumstances or exceptional characteristics applicable to the property, practical difficulties or unnecessary hardships, and unreasonable deprivation of the use of enjoyment of the property. In summary, staff finds that there are no special circumstances that exist for the subject parcel in relation to the other parcels on Arcadia Terrace. And in fact, the subject parcel is the second largest single lot along that walk street. Additionally, with the compliant 30-foot front setback, there is still approximately 5,511 square feet of potential development area, which we feel could still very much accommodate a 2-unit development. And then that leads me to, as we are recommending denial of the variance, the development review permit, major modification, investing tentative parcel map are all also contingent on the approval of the variance. Therefore, as all the findings can't be made for the variance, the findings for these applications can also not be made without the variance approval. As required, public notices were sent out within a 750-foot radius of the subject property. Notices were posted in Santa Monica Daily Press. There were 3 comments letters received, 2 in support of staff's recommendation of denial, so I guess in opposition to the project, and there was a comment letter also provided by the applicant. And so in conclusion, staff recommends the Planning Commission deny the development review permit, deny the variance, deny the vesting tentative parcel map, and deny the major modification and adopt the provided statement of official action. And I'm here to answer any of your questions.
Great. Thank you very much for that staff report. We appreciate it. And I think I see one hand down here first, Commissioner Tolkien.
Just the general environment. That Walk Street, those older buildings, there's none that have been requested to be put on landmarks, as a landmark?
I do not believe there are any designations along Arcadia Terrace, but I'm not 100% sure, but I don't believe there are any.
Okay.
Was that did I answer that? Okay.
Commissioner Lambert?
I have a couple of questions, Ross, and since I don't have my glasses, I can't see anything, so. Okay. Are these reading glasses?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Can you speak louder?
You didn't want to know what I said. I need a couple clarifications. In the criteria or the findings for a variance, we say that the strict application of the provisions of this ordinance would result in unreasonable deprivation of the use or enjoyment of the property. And it's mentioned in different language in another section of the findings. What do you mean by that and how do you evaluate it?
So ultimately, I believe is that the finding J?
It is J.
Yeah, so that's where instead of looking at the parcel by itself, we have to compare it to the other. It's basically a parity finding in a lot of ways in comparing it to the other context of the street. And ultimately, we did not find that this 30-foot, the reduction of the setback compliance with the 30-foot setback would deprive the property owner to still develop their property to a 2-unit or whatever they might choose to do. So ultimately, all the variance or findings were always looked in the context of Arcadia Terrace specifically, and in relation to past development, the requirements, and possible potential that could be.
Well, the issue for us is there is no past development with the exception of the next door.
One, yes.
So we have nothing to base this on.
And
we say that you could build, I can't remember what it was, 2,700 square, whatever it was, 2 units with a total of 3,000 square feet. What if that doesn't work and it doesn't happen? We end up with this basically blighted property staying there. I mean, we're assuming that it makes sense to build smaller units. How do we know that?
I don't think, and I could be corrected if I'm wrong, but none of the variance findings are sounds like you're talking about the economic feasibility.
I understand, but there's a correlation. I mean, you can't say, well, you can build 2,500 square feet if it doesn't work.
I can't comment on the economic feasibility of would the 2 potentially smaller units in a compliant building be feasible or not. That's not information that I would be able to.
But you see the disconnect for me.
I can understand that smaller units could be not as profitable.
If we deny this variance, is there anything stopping the owner from building a single-family home of exactly the same height and scale that is next door?
Ultimately, no. I mean, they could build a very similar building as their neighbor did, which is a single-family home. I believe that neighbor did receive a waiver to be able to build a single-family home.
How so?
I can't.
Hold on.
Some of the history of that project I'm not maybe as familiar with, but I know there was a waiver approved because essentially it is a multi-unit that is the zoning. Right. So a waiver was applied for and approved to be able to build a single unit. But even I believe, and I could be wrong, but with the housing element update to our zone, I believe we removed single unit dwelling as a land use. As a new land use, as this is a multi-unit zone district.
So the owner could not build a single-family house on an R3 site, is that correct?
I believe that is correct, as that is no longer at a permitted use. We are intending that this is a multi-family, zoning district.
Even on a substandard lot of 4,000 square feet?
It is substandard in, context of the R3, but is not substandard along Arcadia Terrace.
No, I know.
I just wanted to clarify, it sounds like this discussion, the questions are being proposed about a potential future application that could be submitted. And in that context, SB 330 would apply, the replacement requirements would apply with a new application that would be filed today. However, this is leading into speculation about a future application that we don't have a way to accurately weigh in on.
My whole point goes back to we are assuming it's feasible to build 2 smaller units with a 30-foot setback. That's just what I wanted to take away. I totally embrace the idea of a 30-foot front yard requirement for R3 properties because they tend to be larger multifamily buildings. What was the rationale for basically overriding the 15-foot setback that's existed since 1910 on this walk street and putting a 30-foot setback instead?
So I dug into this as best I could. There's not great documentation. It was hard enough to even figure out when did these 2 specific streets get a 30-foot front yard setback where all the rest of R3 is 20. I wasn't able to find documentation of when this came to be, or let alone why it happened. I can only take an educated guess and speculation of if this 30-foot front yard is only for these two walk streets. There must be something special about these two that we felt at that time deserved a different front setback than the rest of R3. And the only thing I could think of that could be different is there is no street. So maybe that is where a larger front setback requirement came to be, but that is just a guess.
You mean the other R3 setback is 20 feet and this is 30?
In the rest of the R3 zone district, everywhere else in the city, it's only 20 feet. However, this provision of 30 feet is specific to the two walk streets of Arcadia Terrace and Seaview Terrace.
Right.
So unfortunately, the documentation, I can't find the documentation of where the 30 feet came from, but it was specific to those. So there must have been a reason.
I think there was a reason.
I imagine there
Yeah,
was.
and I think it had something to do with backdoor preservation.
Potentially.
Let me see. Oh, the other thing, finally, this has an Appian Way address.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have an Arcadia Terrace address.
Correct.
Why?
Address is not necessarily tied to where your front parcel line is. So your front parcel line is always, if you're on a corner, it's going to always be the shorter distance, which in this case is Arcadia Terrace. So even though they were assigned an address of Appian Way, which happens sometimes on all corner parcels that might have been developed to face the side instead of the front, I don't know the history of where why that address was chosen, but that is why Arcadia Terrace is the front and not Appian Way as far as development standards are concerned.
Oh, and then finally, I know that the crawl space is being violated, even though it's being boarded up on a regular basis, is my understanding that people are getting into it. Does code enforcement know? I mean, that could be obviously a fire situation if it got really bad.
I'm not aware of a code enforcement on that, but
I'm just concerned about the public safety issue of that building standing there. Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair Raskin.
So I'm trying to understand the issue of whether or not the site can support 2 or more units given the existing site constraints. And I'm curious, is it your position that it can support the 5,000 or so square feet that you referred to, if that can support 2 units with parking?
I think parking would probably be tough. I think that's why the commission back in February of 2021 asked that would a parking variance had made more sense, to not have to provide the 4 spaces. As I mentioned to Commissioner Lambert, I can't comment on whether the feasibility of 2 smaller units makes sense. All I can comment on is this is the approximate square footage that could be built compliantly without the variance. Which, looking at other condo developments we've done in the city, each of them could still be well over 2,000 square feet. That's the only comment that I was making regarding to what potentially could be built.
And forgive me for putting you on the spot, but do you know if the 92 LUP requires parking for this property?
I do not, but I think it would probably be assumed that Coastal Commission, which this project will have to go to, will probably want some amount of parking. So I don't know if it's going to be 2 spaces or maybe they would be okay with 1 space each. So that would be for Coastal to determine. And this project would have to go before Coastal, before a building permit would be issued.
I mean, I think this is going to be a critical issue, and I would perhaps like to revisit this as we continue our discussion this evening. Let me ask you this. Could the property owner build an ADU in that setback area?
The only time that someone can so that would be the front setback. The only time that we would be required to allow them to build an ADU in the front, which typically we wouldn't allow, is if there was no other area on the property that they could build up to 800 square feet of ADU size. So if someone was demolishing the property, we could argue that you could accommodate that through the development you're designing. Let's say if the existing property already was developed and now post that development, they're like, we want an ADU. we would then say, well, yeah, I guess there is no other place that you can put it besides here. So there is a way, but not so much, I don't feel, with a complete redevelopment of the site.
Got it. Okay.
And going back to the parking as well, I mean, I think if I remember correctly, the commission wondered, like, well, what if the front setback variance was only for the parking area, not for the upper floors? Like, there was discussion of that held amongst the commission, but ultimately, the variance is for, not just the parking level, but for the first and second floor. So there could be
Okay. And then just finally, real quick, turning to our Chief Deputy City Attorney, we received some late correspondence that alleged that replacing the 4-unit building with a 2-unit building would violate Government Code Section 66300D1. My understanding is that does not apply because the application was submitted pre-2019. Is that correct?
Yes, the application was submitted in 2016, and under 66300D4, it makes clear that the subdivision applies only to housing development projects that submit complete applications on or after January 1, 2020.
Excellent. Thank you.
Commissioner Fontaine, do you have any questions?
Yes. You were speaking about the ADU, and I know it's very conjectural, but if there is a public easement, which there is, at least, 15 feet wide, do we have to allow the encroachment into that public easement by an ADU? Someone says, I want an ADU, and guess what? They're going to put it right in a front easement.
I don't know if I have.
I mean, maybe it's a question for.
I know they can override our development standards. I'm not sure if state law really expressed if the ADU could then override the easement requirement. Yeah.
I think we would have to look into that issue. So the catch-all provision that Mr. Furman's referring to is that there is a provision in state ADU law that says that none of the city's development requirements can prohibit at least one ADU of 800 square feet. So that's what he's speaking about,
yeah.
right? So, but that one we would have to look into.
Okay. To answer one quick question for me, if this project, what's the density requirement? So based on land area, how many units would be allowed there?
I believe they could actually propose 3 units. So when you divide the square footage of the lot, I believe I don't have the number off my top of my head. I believe you divide by 1250, it can get you to 3. So they're essentially proposing a less dense project than what the maximum they could under code.
I was just thinking from crazy speculation that we're speculating what could happen in the future if they tried to refile in the future and then SB 330 kicked in and says you can't reduce from 4 units. Now they have 4 units, they can apply for a density bonus and to add in 1 more unit.
You can only get a density bonus if you are proposing 5 or more units. So a 4-unit project is not eligible for the provisions under state density bonus law.
Great. No, I'm glad we knocked that out quickly. Okay, I'm going to listen to the architect then at this point, or I don't think we have any other questions. Right. Okay, so at that point, it's the architect's opportunity to speak. And I'm going to just remind the audience, I know everyone has a lot to say on this, but would like everyone to say that at the podium so everybody gets to hear it and that we get to hear the people speak at the podium, please.
Sorry.
How does this work here? So
Just hit the left and right.
And for the audience who hasn't been here before, what will happen next is he'll get 15 minutes to present. Everybody in the audience who's put in a chit, and I have 5 or 6 in front of me, will get their time to speak, and then he gets an opportunity to come back and rebut what was said, and then we, as commissioners, opine on it and approve it or deny it.
Jerry, what's the time for?
You have 15 minutes.
15. So there we go. Okay. Good evening. Sorry for the confusion about the start time. My history has always been 7 o'clock, but I'm happy to be back in the building. I haven't been here since COVID. And to talk more about this project. My name's Ralph Metcher, Ralph Metcher Architects. My office has been in Santa Monica for over 30 years. I've lived here for actually 50 years. So I'm committed to the community. and its future. So let me run through this. We can talk about some of the issues as they come up. And basically, we feel that staff has erred in their recommendation to deny the project. And let me see if we can go through some of the issues. You know, we understand the project is R3 zoned, Appian Way, and the beach and the view is across the street. So the idea that there's a question about why its major facade would be along Appian Way, I don't really understand that. We did, per comments and here and at the ARB, change the elevations. You've seen the differences. We made a lot of changes to the design to have it be more integrated design, to take a lot of the glass out, to open it up to Appian Way. It's not that many pedestrians that come through, but we honor the easement that's in place, and that's really critical here. And so in some sense, even with some of the questioning that's gone on, why is there the 30-foot setback requirement? And there actually are two other walk streets in Ocean Park, Copeland Court, and then the one that's just south of Hollister Park. And I think they actually have 30-foot front yard setbacks as well. I don't know if at the time, the planning staff, whenever that was, just said, hey, let's make all the walk streets 30 feet. And may not have known about this walk-in park easement. But clearly here, the buildings were all built fairly early on when this was marketed and sold, and these buildings went up. And they went up basically at 15, 16, 17-foot setbacks to honor that. And the idea was, in my opinion, is really to create a quiet, this is on the top of a bluff. This lot, 1665 Appian, isn't part of those upper lots. We're 13 feet below. So the idea that because up above they have to abide by certain rules, and we just shouldn't grant the variance in this case. Granting the variance actually creates a design which is symmetric at the base. The apartment building that is to the north on the other side of the easement, which we'll show. So here's the lot in yellow. This is the middle picture on the left. You can see the apartment building from roughly the late 40s. And it's got a blank side facing Arcadia Terrace. And you can see the existing building. And then and you can see the new building behind and some of the existing buildings. And they're larger. There's the Lowe's Hotel in the bottom right. There's an apartment building across the street. So again, to say that the only context we can look at are just the Arcadia Terrace lots, which are all small lots. There are lots of the Lowe's Hotel and other hotels that are 10, 20, 40,000 square feet. So the idea that the only context we can look at is just look to the east. Don't look across the street. There's other apartment buildings. Don't look to the north. Don't look to the south. Is the wrong context. These are the views from looking from the northwest and the southwest of the proposed building. You can see it's lots of changes to really tie it together and have it sit appropriately in the site. You'll notice what has come up, a question is the height of the building along the street, and I'll show you some pictures. We have landscaping along the sidewalk. The first floor, per the average natural grade, we're going to be 8 inches above the existing first floor of the building, the existing apartment building, which is completely blank along the sidewalk, completely. So here you have the existing west elevation and the proposed below. Here you have the south elevation. On the top is the existing, below is the proposed. Here you have the east elevation, which is really the first 13 feet of it are the retaining wall. And then on the bottom, you have the north elevation, which is the elevation along Arcadia Terrace. And here's a bird's eye view of how this would sit. So I'll quickly run, here's the survey of existing, and you'll notice the stairs in the middle that run up above. We've superimposed, this is the existing buildings, and we've shown in the dashed lines what the 15-foot, the 30-foot setback would be and how far outside it is of the existing buildings. They're not going to be torn down. It was sort of stated in the staff report. When these are torn down, they will be replaced with a 30-foot setback. They're going to be remodeled. That's what people do when you have particularly what you would call legally non-conforming setbacks, is you don't want to lose that space. The idea was to create a pedestrian way. And then here we had a surveyor go and accurately define what the existing setbacks are. And some are slightly below 15 feet. Most are in the 15, 16, 17-foot range. Our site plan, this is the garage. The question about if the red line is the 30-foot setback on the left, if that is the line that we were held to, you obviously couldn't build, you could build a two-car garage. And that won't meet the standards that of the city at this point or what the Coastal Commission requests. So we're in this conundrum of how do you provide more than one unit if you can't provide the parking for it. The first floor is all part of the one unit. The second floor, the left side is part of the first floor unit, the bedrooms, and on the right side, those are the bedrooms for the second unit, whose living space is on the third floor, and it has a mezzanine above the kitchen area, and it alone has the use of the roof deck. And if we go backwards, again, you'll see here at the first floor, this is at the 15-foot proposed setback. And the planters that restore a green space as the easement requests as you approach the stairs. Second floor. So this is the west elevation again, the north elevation. So you'll be walking past this building on your way to the stairs, which you can see start to go up, and the profile of the new building that's above, that just built. The east elevation and the south elevation. So using, a couple of materials, stucco and some different colors, and the copper up on the upper level to try in different ways to tie the whole building together in the design. There's a section, you can see the different levels, another section, and a long section. Again, on the left, you see the stairs on your way up to Arcadia Top, the bluff top houses on Arcadia Terrace. I wanted to show some context photos, because when there were questions about being pedestrian friendly, this is what is there now. This is at Seaside Terrace. There's a housing project to the left behind it. There's an apartment building. The next building, the rust-colored one, is the apartment building that's existing. It's all garage doors. On the right side, there's some 3- and 4-story apartment buildings. As you jump past our site, you get to the Lowe's Hotel. And then this is going further down and looking backwards at Sea Castle, which it's all blank for the first 8 or 10 feet. And on the right side, you have almost a 2-story concrete wall. And this is the other walk street, and you can see again at the first floor is always set up a number of feet. So the idea that we wouldn't maintain the existing first floor level doesn't seem logical. And this is that walkway up, and you can see on the left, the newest building also has a 15-foot setback. So asking for the 30 feet is not in keeping with what the existing buildings on the walk streets in this neighborhood have. Again, looking at some other existing buildings, getting up to Shutters Hotel. This is an old apartment building the Community Corp actually owns. And again, you can see that they're right on the sidewalk. And this is Shutters. And this is looking back now. We're standing on the right side. In front is the existing building. And you can see where the first floor is. And now let's take a walk up top. You're going to go up the stairs to Arcadia Terraces, going up the stairs. You can see that in the new project recently finished, they're ignoring the easement to have an open park-like area to help knit this together as a pedestrian community. And when you get up the stairs, there's some other neighbors as well who've built fences to enclose that. But you'll see that those that keep it, it's got a nice feel at the 15-foot setback. It's healthy, it's not unhealthy. On the right side is this large Corten steel fencing and gates and landscape that's being put in. And they really turn their back or their side to their neighbors. This is walking towards Ocean Avenue and then looking back towards the beach. And you can begin to see what could be here and what should be here, looking both ways. Again, this is just showing this because this shows what the allowable envelope would be with the 30-foot setback. First floor at the top, second floor, and third floor, 30, 30, and 40 feet. This is what's being requested, 15, 15, and 30 feet. And this is showing in elevation what the massing would look like at the top without the variance and below with the variance. And again, you can see the variance allows us to create the symmetry that exists on our Arcadia Terrace as you walk all the way up. And the photos here, again, showing the bird's eye view. So it really is, again, our feeling is that it's a sort of a small view that staff is presenting that this doesn't meet the requirements to approve the variance, when in fact the context is much larger than just the houses on the bluff above, which this lot really isn't part of the development that was created. There are the pylons that exist as you can kind of see them buried in there right in front of the stairs. There's two historic pylons on each side. That really is the beginning of the Arcadia Terrace bluff type homes. I think that pretty much covers what the project is, our rationale for why we feel that this is justified and in keeping with the neighborhood, and will help bring life back to Appian Way and to Arcadia Terrace. So I'm here to answer questions.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Do we have questions right now, commissioners? I have Vice Chair Raskin has a question.
Yeah, could we just go back to the slide that showed the ground floor parking?
There you go.
Yeah, that's the one. So the hash line there that kind of goes through the middle of the footprint, that's the envelope per code, right?
Correct.
Yeah. And so can you just show us again where the parking spaces are? It's the center area there, right?
The parking, there's two on the left side.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's right.
Two on the right side. So there's two garages.
Right.
You come down, there's, the training area on the left is one unit. It has a stair that goes up and an elevator, and the same on the right side for the second unit.
Got it. So, I mean, it's looking, well, we'll get back to that discussion later. Thanks.
So I don't know how you, this is pretty tight as it is. I don't know how you get parking for a second unit.
Right.
Okay, I think we are going to move on to public comment, and we'll come back to you for your rebuttal.
Great.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to read off some names, and people come up, and we have 3 minutes tonight, and a couple of people have given time to Eugene Alger. One person, Cooper Cass, gave me their name. The second person did not give me a name, and I would like to have that person's name. I'm going to just have you put your name on here, please. Hand it back to staff. Okay, with that bureaucratic effort over, I'm going to go on and call a couple of people, and I apologize. I am good at butchering names, and there are a couple that are very hard to read here. I have somebody who might be Tova Kitron.
I prefer that Eugene
So you're passing on your term? I don't think we get to play it that way, but I will do it this one time, okay? So let's just go to Mr. Eugene so that everybody can speak after him. And Eugene, 2 people have donated time to you, and I think that's 1 minute each, which is going to give you 5 minutes total.
Okay, thank you. All right, hello. Good afternoon or good evening. I'm the owner of 24 Arcadia, the single-family home that built within code. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. I have to say that this came as short notice overall, considering the holiday, the summer months. And a couple of us, myself included, and a couple of young ladies out here had to fly back from vacations to be here. But with that said, it's important enough for us to get this right. And that is, this property is on Arcadia Terrace. And it is of a size lot that fits well with Arcadia Terrace. It's just that simple. It's the second largest lot on the street. It's larger than the lot I just built on. My lot could easily have held 4 cars, probably more, but I chose to have less because of the opportunities the city allows right below me and right in front of the Appian Way property. I have a 4,000 square foot house, could have been 36, 32, something like that, if I had chosen to have more parking spots. There's nothing unusual about this lot. My lot is smaller. My lot is got more slope to it. So this is all about a simple issue. It's a simple issue around whether or not you can build 25, 27, 2,800 square foot condos and be worth X, or you can build 2,200 square foot property, 2,000 square foot at Y. And it has nothing to do with anything more than that. Now, I want to touch on a few other things as I come here today. You know, we looked at all the streets that were R3 in the city of Santa Monica. This was presented by my attorney earlier this week. And you'll notice that very purposefully that Seaview and Arcadia have a 30-foot setback. And there's a very logical reason for that, because it's a walk street and it pushes everything back over time. I appreciate the fact that their architect seems to understand the laws and seems to understand why, or wants to project what he thinks, or why things were done, or what will be happening in the future. But what I do know is this property can be properly developed without any sort of variance. And I found it interesting that I was very much on the phone, or whatever it was, Zoom, back a year and a half ago. And 5 of the 6 were willing to deny this at the time. And they gave him a chance, and he said, oh, sure, I'll have another chance at it. Only to come back with virtually, outside of the ABR, I think I'm saying that right, architectural design differences, basically the same scope and size. He didn't change it at all. That's the truth. I realize we can throw things at it here and there. We can say it's not on Arcadia Terrace. Now he's calling it Oceanfront. There's no place even called Oceanfront. Now he's going to compare it to the old Lowe's Hotel or the ones in front, when it's a 4,400 square foot property consistent with Arcadia Terrace. This is silly stuff that's driving, as you can tell, me a little bit nuts, and others in this room, neighbors, because all we care about is preserving Arcadia Terrace. And this is really about taking value to one individual over the benefits of Arcadia Terrace, the street, and all of the neighbors. And he hasn't played friendly. Before this, we were in a lawsuit for an easement. I know, again, I listened to the tape going back a year and a half ago. I know in that tape, he suggests that he tried to work with us. I don't call a lawsuit working with us. I know going back to that time, it was suggested that he didn't know where the keys were. He doesn't know anything about Arcadia Terrace. He has a property on Arcadia Terrace. Any key you have opens that gate. Amazon knows it. UPS knows it. FedEx knows it. We all know it. okay? Okay, I just want to point this out. I'm trying to get through my daughter said, don't swear. I'm trying to cut through the stuff to the simple facts. He can build. I get it. He can take my view. I get it. Just stay in your lane. Build it. It's okay. I'm cool. But expanding it at the expense of one of the most precious streets in Santa Monica is silly. Now, here really quick when I run through this, sorry, 'cause I just want to quickly show you that when you go through all the streets.
Sir,
I'm done?
I'm going to say you've used your 5 minutes and you got 2 extra minutes. I'm really sorry to tell you that.
I got 2 extra minutes?
No, you got 2 extra minutes and you've used it.
You guys got this anyway.
We did get it. We reviewed it very carefully and you used, and I think that came through very clearly.
I have a question. I have a couple of questions. Are you aware that this owner cannot build what you built?
No, he can't. He can't build a single.
No, he cannot build a single-family house.
I don't think he has any interest in building a single family.
Well, I don't either. But he can't do what you did.
You seem to be more interested in what he can or can't do in the future. I just want him to build whatever.
I want to see something happen on that property.
I do
what's
too.
there now.
I'm all for it. Take my view. I'm cool. Just.
And there's something that's, the 30-foot front yard setback is much bigger than R3 elsewhere in the city.
You didn't. I suggest you didn't review my plans.
No. Wait. What I'm saying is that the other properties on Arcadia Terrace is much smaller than yours, much smaller than his. Do you really think a 50 or 30-foot front yard is going to work for them?
I think it would, and I would tell you that again, if you look at the R3. Okay, and why these streets were purposely designed to R3. It wasn't done, it's suggested by some in this room that it was done like incorrectly. When it actually, if you look at it, was done very thoughtfully. And I take exception to people who somehow want to determine what's going to happen in the future and somehow project that into approving something incorrectly.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, hold on. We have one more question for you, or at least one more.
Yeah. I'm genuinely trying to understand this, and I'm not asking this pedantically, but.
And I'm not an expert on any of this stuff.
Yeah, no, I get it, but, I'm really trying to understand how you could fit 4 spots. I'm generally familiar with your property. I've seen it from the street. I'm really trying to understand how you can fit four parking spaces in there.
I can fit 3 right from the get-go. My garage could have been wider. Okay, I could have done 3. And then I have a very large, kitchenette and my washers and dryers on the bottom floor. I chose to do that. I could have put them up higher. And I have a gym. I could have went deeper. So I'm just giving you an example. I had it at one time as like a 5-car, but and again, I don't want to take more time because others are going to talk about the parking situation. But again, there's a lot of parking available if you choose to use it based on what the city allows, which is really nice. So
my second question, and I get where you're coming from with the purposes of the 30-foot width within the street, a 30-foot setback within the street to create the streetscape. When I went up on the walk street, many of the properties had, hedges or other things that kind of squared off the street, so you didn't accomplish that goal. Sure. And I'm wondering if you could just briefly speak to that.
Well, I would tell you that I've gone back and forth. As you know, I put, again, incorrectly in his document, he suggested I'm not at 42, I am, just on a side note. Okay, but so my fence is at the right level. I did put the trees up mainly to, again, what I think we all know, and this property is not immune to it, nor are any of us in that area, and that's all the transit issues that take place. Just to give you an idea, I have someone walk that street every night 5 times from 10 o'clock at night to 5 in the morning. So it is a much more active space. I would argue with anything that was suggested that somehow Appian's more active than what I experience where I'm at today. I'm not sure if I'm answering it correctly or not. And in another case, I think people have built hedges over the years throughout Beverly Hills, Santa Monica, Venice, you name it. So I think it's very common at its core.
It's been really controversial here in Santa Monica. Had you not, maybe haven't heard that, but it's a very controversial issue.
But you can. I'm saying
I'm sorry. I don't want to.
You can knock it down too. If someone told me I have to do it, I'll do it.
Okay,
I tried,
sure.
yeah,
Let's just go with the questions that are in front of you.
sorry.
You're doing a
I
great
just
job.
responded to your.
No, I understand. You're doing a great job. Anybody else have questions for this gentleman? Sir, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. So I'm going to keep moving on here. Audrey Alger. It's a tough act to follow. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, okay. Hello, my name is Audrey Alger, and I am the youngest daughter of Eugene and Agnes Alger, who are the owners of Arcadia Terrace. And I'm here tonight speaking on behalf of my mother, who is rather ill and not able to attend this evening's meeting. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to everybody and to the Planning Commission about why I believe that 1665 Appian Way's request for the variance and other entitlements should be denied. Arcadia Terrace is a very special street. Some would say it's a historic street in beautiful Santa Monica, and we're all lucky to be so close to the beach. The special nature of this walk street, as well as its proximity to the beach, was the primary reason why my parents chose to purchase their property, build their home, and retire on Arcadia Terrace. When my parents purchased this property and built our home, they were well aware of the rigorous protections that the city of Santa Monica put in place to preserve the cherished characteristics of Arcadia Terrace, which make it the neighborhood that it is today. To me, it seems quite simple. It's clear that the developer who purchased 1665 Appian Way was well aware of the various protections and requirements in place for any building on that property when he purchased it. To now attempt to circumvent these protections in an effort to build a larger structure for his own financial gain seems to be the very thing that those protections are put in place to guard against. He sued us and our neighbors over the easement, and now he wants a variance on a property that can be built on exactly the way it is, at the expense of my family's home and all of our neighbors. There is simply no truth to the comments made about how this law is unique and cannot be built on. If anyone knows it, it is us, and our law is a lot smaller and quite steeper, and we were able to build. Granting this variance would forever alter the pedestrian walkway that makes Arcadia Terrace what it is today. My understanding is that the variance requested by this developer would make this walk street only 30 feet wide, which feels more like an alley and not a pedestrian walkway. Now, quickly changing subjects, in the last meeting there was a talk about parking, and I would like to put this issue to bed. With good planning, you can have 4 cars and possibly even more. Again, which we know because we had the option to do so, and we chose not to. The city of Santa Monica provides residents who are close to the beach with 2 permits for the residents, 2 additional permits for guests to park in the lot directly across the street from 1665 Appian Way, including the 2 parking spots we have on our property, plus the 4 that we're able to get from the city of Santa Monica. We would have 6 permits for our family and friends to park in. I believe the cost is about $155 per parking spot per year. Again, this is something nicely provided by the city of Santa Monica, and everyone here tonight that lives close by likely enjoys this option. The silly part is that
Did you have a thought you wanted to finish in 30 seconds?
yes, my main thought is that it's important to preserve the characteristics of this walkway, and I also think it's extremely important to preserve and to support the neighborhood. And I don't think that that has been the case at all, which is quite unfortunate.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Let me see if we have any
I
questions.
have a question.
Turns out we have at least a question for you.
Maybe you can enlighten us. The parking lots that directly across the street, is it fully utilized in the evening? Is it maxed out?
No.
Is it fully utilized during the day?
I would say on Saturdays and Sundays, it's tough. However, patience makes it quite easy.
What makes it?
If you're patient, you can get a spot. And it's also, when you have a permit for that lot, you also have the option to park at the parking lot that's further down, closer to Shutters. And that one is like, I would say double the size.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I think we're done.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on. And I am going to go back to, you're at the end of the line right now, I think. Mini Servaj. And I apologize, I cannot read. I'm terrible in the first place reading names, but it looks like Mira? Miri? I'm going to go with Miri. Oh, now you want to talk? Okay, so when I call you name, you get to talk. Miri.
She gets me
Okay, how about Diane Simpson? Followed by Joel Simpson, and then Jillian.
Good evening. My name is Diane Simpson. I live at 23 Arcadia Terrace. This memorable saga with Mr. Shiley, his business is Shiley, Mr. Rahimi, began in 2017. He sent all the owners on Arcadia Terrace an affidavit to sign to relinquish our rights to our easement on the terrace. When we refused to sign, we were notified by the lawyer that if we did not respond in a timely manner, that we would lose all our rights. Many of us have been there for years, so he may have assumed that we were easily manipulated or maybe older, but we didn't. So we hired a lawyer. I have a receipt for $1,300 for that. We all had to show up for mediation, all that. You know, Mr. Rahimi is a bully. He's been verbally abusive to us on the block, and I think at the least, he should at least obey the standards of the building codes for the city of Santa Monica. That's it.
We had Joel Simpson next, and then Jillian. And then Christopher. Yeah, Joel, come on down.
Very good. Okay, hi there. I'm Joel Simpson. Been a resident on Arcadia Terrace for a really long time, 50 years. So if anybody wants to know a little bit about what it's like to be on Arcadia Terrace and how it feels to live there, I'd be happy to answer any questions. And I'm really here just to say that I believe that the city should deny the applicant, Shiley LP's request for the front setback of 30 feet to 15 feet, and just follow the city's ordinance advice. And that's really all I have to say. If anybody would like to ask me any questions, I'd be happy to answer. You're good.
Does not look like we have any questions right now, but thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Very good.
Okay. The next speaker I had here is Jillian, and it looks like Sycon? You were next, sir. I'm sorry. I was trying to line people. You're up after Jillian. Okay. So I'm going to need you to, after you speak, to also fill out a chit too, please.
Hi, I'm speaking for Jillian. My name is Bob Sinitsky. We live up on Ocean Ave. I agree with the sentiments of these people here of not to grant a change. I do want to say, we believe, Jillian and I, that people on this committee, not specifically you or whoever came before you, made a mistake in granting variances to the man who doesn't want, who's above. And that monstrosity has ruined our views from above. So we would like not to see another variance given that continues to erode the views of others. And it's a very different opinion, but we share the sentiment of that you shouldn't give a variance, and we believe variances were given on the gentleman who spoke's property. That's taken away views from other people, and we don't want to see that continue. So that's just our feeling and why we're here today.
No question.
I think we might have a question or two for you. Come on, sir.
Which property are you talking about?
His, yes.
But you didn't get a variance. He didn't get a variance.
Height? You didn't get any variance?
No, he was code compliant.
That's why I kind of know where you're at.
Okay.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
There's no
Time out,
variance
time
at all?
out, people.
Okay.
then
Time
I
out. This is a
apologize.
discussion, this is between you and us.
Okay, yep.
Stay
It
with
seems
us.
that that's much higher than everything else and it's taken away
But it's
views.
the R3 height limit, so.
Okay, then I apologize, but we don't want to see more variances given, and we just wanted to be on the record.
I have one final question, and it kind of applies to anybody who hasn't spoken yet. The 99% of the properties on the Walk Street have about 15-foot front yard setbacks, with the exception of the new one. Why would you have a problem with this same property, the property downhill, having a 15-foot setback like you did?
It's not about the setback, it was the heights.
Well, the heights that's not in question right now.
Okay, well then, that's where our issue is. I'm not.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. That question was to people who are speaking next, who have the opportunity to still speak. So, okay, we just talked about Julian. Christopher, come on down.
I guess that question might have been for me. My name's Christopher Garvin, and I live at 26 Arcadia Terrace with my wife, LaWanda. And I think staff just said what I couldn't articulate because I don't know the code and regulation, but I would like to urge you, Commission, to deny the variance and just stick with the current code. It seems reasonable. And something I want to clear up right away is 26 Arcadia Terrace is at the top of the stairs. It's the first house at the very top of the stairs. It's the one with the big high hedge in front of it. And I think one of you had a comment on it. And my wife and I bought the house about 1.5 years ago, and that hedge is coming down in height because we don't like it. We think it looks kind of formidable as you walk up. You don't see the house. We're actually very proud of the house. It's very beautiful the way it is. It's an old, not a green and green, but kind of that craftsman beachy look. And it's got pitched roofs, and it does have the 15-foot setback. And I think that's why it will look acceptable with the 15-foot setback. And being a fairly narrow walkway, I think that's why they put the 30-foot setback. Otherwise, you've got this dark, narrow corridor. If you were to build 40 feet or even 20 feet at the 15-foot setback, and remember, I think the 15-foot setback is from the center of Arcadia Terrace. Is that correct?
Yes.
And Arcadia Terrace is only 10 feet maximum. So Arcadia Terrace, the street, the stairs are about 8 to 10 feet, something like that. So you're actually very close. If you grant the 15-foot variance, so they can build 15 foot, that's going to be right up close, and it's just going to be dark and shadowy and fairly imposing down there. So we oppose the variance. And something else I want to clear up is somebody mentioned the crawl space that goes boarded up and called it blight. I've never seen that crawl space boarded up. It's been open ever since we bought the place, and we frequent there quite a bit. We drive up every day, and it's blighted because of neglect. I mean, they chose not to maintain the building. So you can't say it will be blighted if it stays. If that building were to remain, I think that building could be refurbished. Maybe they could work with I think it was the racial justice group, the ones that torn down, right? If they could say, okay, what would be an appropriate remodel to destroy the history of that building and make it not blighted? In fact, if the developer thinks that he can't make money off of it, if it's a worthless property without the variance, I'll step up and I'll purchase that property for whatever he paid for it. He won't lose money on it, except for.
Can we get that in writing? In writing?
Thank you very much.
I have a question, actually.
Okay, we have one question for you.
I just wanted to make sure, yes or no, that you're aware that there's, for hedges or fences in the front yard setback, there's a 42-inch height limit.
I do know that.
Good.
I do know that. Remember, we only bought this place 1.5 years ago, so we're still getting to it.
So anything above 42 inches is in violation?
Unless it's grandfathered in. I don't remember the rule on that.
No, it's not.
Well, I believe that's the case. Yeah. But that'd be for code compliance.
Right. You're absolutely right. And I'm just going to add on to that. There's also a lot of evidence that having big, tall hedges as we call them.
Hedges.
is actually less safe. Because now people are hiding behind those hedges and waiting to get into your.
It's blocking our own view.
Right.
I mean,
And eyes on this-
maybe we're on the same page on that.
Eyes on the walkway.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. And deny the variance. Thank you.
Now I am down to my friend here.
You calling me?
Yes, ma'am. I don't know. Ms. Kitron, it is your time to speak, and you have been given 1 extra minute, so you now have 4 minutes.
Hi, my name is Tova Kitron. I own the building on the other side of Arcadia Terrace, on the bottom. So my building and the applicant building is part of the Arcadia Terrace Walk Street. And I can show you a map that shows it. Now, there's a recorded easement of that 30-foot setback. I can show it to you. I attached it to my letter.
We've seen it.
You want to see it?
No, we have seen it. It was in our
Okay.
public record. Thank you.
Okay. The city told the applicant that they cannot deal with all these questions without him going to court first to cancel that easement, because the neighbors did not agree for him to cancel the easement. And the easement says that the only case that he can cancel the easement is by all of us agreeing to it. So he went to court on it. And guess what? After the mediation session, he chose to dismiss the case. All right? Didn't tell us anything, just to dismiss the case. Now, here we go again. We slept again here on the same question. I mean, there is an easement. I mean, if he builds 15 feet and all that, it will project on my building to be a little alley there, you know, for all his building and shadow and everything. I mean, if he gets it, I can do it too. Everybody else can do it. Why not? It's a precedent. So the easement is in place. It was never canceled. And the neighbors don't agree to cancel it.
Right.
And the court didn't grant any expungement of the easement. He dismissed the case. He probably saw that he's not going to win. So that's what it is right now. And I would ask you, I read the report and I agree with it, the staff report. And somebody said here, I think the architect said that the wall, that my wall projected to the Walk Street is blank. Sorry to say it, but there are windows. So I don't know how it's blank. All right? Thank you very much. I can show you the photo.
That's okay. We've been to the site, but we thank you for your comments.
Okay, thank you.
And for waiting your turn. Appreciate
By
it.
the way, about the parking, 40 feet wide, that's what his building is. He can build 4 parking spaces.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you,
ma'am. Okay. I believe I have gotten to the end of my public speakers. So at this point, I'm going to turn it back to the applicant, and they have, I believe, 3 minutes for rebuttal.
Okay. I guess in listening to all this, there's always is confusion on new projects, but this, as I think has been noted, the variance being requested is basically a horizontal variance. There is, as has been said, the height conforms with the allowable height. So this is to allow the first 2 floors to extend 15 feet to the north, honoring the historic easement, the 15 foot on each side. I apologize about the windows. There are windows for the apartments on that one side and a stairway. But this is really, beginning to enhance what Arcadia Terrace could be as a walk street. Because this will set the tone. We can change the gate, fix the pylons, make the stair, legal and ADA compliant to get up and down, clean up the front yards up above. I think the owner here, he's building this one of these units is from he lives in the neighborhood, but he's going to move here. So his interest, is to be here and to work with the neighbors. I think the issue about the lawsuit was, is a little curious. We originally were looking at doing a 3-unit project, which would have meant having a driveway further to the north, and was actually supposedly told by a staff person many years ago that the easement was a problem, and that's why he was asking to get rid of it, and he withdrew that after going through the mediation and the like. So we're really here, this project makes sense. It will only enhance the neighborhood. It doesn't impact views, other than the neighbor behind. But as you said, that's going to happen regardless of what's built here. And we can't get parking spaces off the alley. We're too close to the corner. We're not allowed to put them there. It would take out a whole section, in this case, of the first floor of this project. You don't want parking spaces, all off of Appian Way, just driving in. I don't think those would be, considered legal either. This is really the parking that makes sense to do. It's a 2-unit project. It will bring life back to the neighborhood, and I think it's, there's good reason to support the variance request. Thank you. Questions?
Commissioner Lambert.
About the parking, you're in the coastal zone, correct?
Yes.
Do you think the Coastal Commission would approve you using public parking spaces for your project? That's a rhetorical question.
My understanding is no, they want the public parking to be used for the public.
Right. Do you believe that if we didn't do the variance, you could fit 4 spaces underground? Without going into the setback? What?
Not underground. You would.
Underground?
No.
Okay. And then some clarification.
Hey, hold on a second.
What?
I need the folks in the audience to please be quiet while we're having our discussion. We were quiet when you spoke. It's only fair. Thank you.
I'm a little confused about this mediation court action, whatever the heck, because why would the easement have anything to do with anything when the code says 30 feet? Doesn't matter if there's an easement or not.
I don't know.
I don't really understand.
Like Mr. Rahimi to speak to that. He can. I think he realized that it was at some point that it was not something he didn't want to continue the discussion with the neighbors and just withdrew the idea of getting rid of it.
It wouldn't matter because it's totally irrelevant because the setback.
Wouldn't matter. His assumption was that in the discussions that I wasn't part of, that it was something that he should do in order to proceed with the project with a different a bigger project.
Okay, thank you.
So my question would be, my memory of the last hearing was similar to what somebody said tonight, which is we were perplexed by this. We saw that there was problems with a lack of parking and you wouldn't be able to develop it. And in my memory was the thought was you were going to go back and see if you could provide the parking in the setback area, but respect the rest of the rest of the building would respect the setback.
In the setback area?
Parking underground in the setback area and everything else would be more conforming. And that seems to have gotten, unless I was completely my memory was completely off.
Yeah, and you may be, I don't recall that. There was a lot of discussion. I think there was a continuation to explore issues, but we did look at having so normally when you want a driveway that goes underground, you want to come, so we looked at doing that, but the driveway would have been in the setback area, and then we were told that we couldn't do that. That you can't have your driveway, that we couldn't have it in this was, even prior to that hearing, when we looked at the 3-unit project, that you couldn't have the setback, the driveway in the setback, which would have been right up against the easement. So you would have had the 15-foot easement and then put the driveway in the front yard, which from the side, which we were told that we couldn't do. And then we could have gotten maybe 6 spaces with having a disc, that you put your car on and it turns you to direct you into spaces.
Okay, but in my mind, I'm just thinking, with looking at the plans I see today, you could drive into the driveway as you have it existing today, and you could make a left into those parking spaces that are below the surface, and you get your 4 parking, you get 2.
They're not below the surface. They're semi-subterranean.
Okay, so they're semi-subterranean.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
They're semi-subterranean, but they're still not bringing the entire first and second floors out.
Right, but
which then messes up the whole.
If we have to adhere to the 30-foot setback, semi-subterranean parking is not allowed in the front yard.
Okay, but.
By code.
We're trying to work through.
I'm just saying it.
Right, but if you're willing to make you're not allowed to have a building in the setback, but that's why you have a variance request. So, I mean, we're looking for creative solutions, and I'm just not sensing that we got a real creative solution. And I'm sorry, that's not a question. That was a statement. So I apologize.
So, if you could look at, well, you'd have to go down. You'd have to, if you want to do like engineered parking, you'd have to drive down, but then your spaces would go down. It's really, down another level. I'm not sure if we're getting into geology, water table issues if we're going down. I don't, I tend to be, I'm an architect. I try to be creative for the parking. This at the end of the day was a sensible solution without, like say, if you try to park off the alley, like some of the other properties have, there's a minimum that you would be able to put maybe 2 spaces off the alley. They would take space from the first floor of this project. Right. It's different than the uphill sites in that sense. And if you impose the 30-foot setback, then your parking can't be in that semi-subterranean parking can't be in the front yard. So it would have to be the driveway you'd have to put the driveway in that area to get down below.
Okay, I don't want to. I mean, I appreciate your comments. I just think we're talking by each other, and I apologize I didn't have a chance to meet with you before because I could have articulated this better. But I just think that your design today would work if you left your parking in the field that is today, but you left your buildings back at the setback line where they're supposed to be.
Can I just?
We would have less.
I'm sorry, say that again. I'm sorry.
Do you have your plans in front of you? Can we get your plans up here?
Can I just ask a question of clarification with what you're doing? This is not a fully subterranean parking structure, right? So going into the front yard would require a subterranean parking structure.
Here it is.
Is that right?
Sure.
Thank you.
So the portion to the left of the red line would be.
But why couldn't that level be encroaching into the setback?
Right.
And everything else be back?
It's not. It's semi-subterranean. It can't be in the front yard. It's semi-subterranean. It's not fully.
So you would have to ask for a variance for that? Is that what you're telling me? Okay, so we're in the middle of a variance hearing. What's the matter with another variance?
It would.
Okay, it's above ground, but it's not 2 stories above ground. I'm done with my comments, my questions. Thank you. Anybody else have any comments, questions?
Sorry, just one point of clarification. I mean, the genesis of this whole parking discussion, I think, in part, is that the driveway has to be set back a certain amount of space itself from the intersection, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So you can't, for example, you can't move the driveway closer to the intersection to create, say 4 side-by-side surface level parking spots because then it'd be too close to the intersection.
Correct.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions? Not seeing any. I think we're going to close the public hearing and have discussion.
Thank you.
Okay, who wants to lead the discussion?
Can I start?
Mr. Fonda-Bernardi.
The guiding principle here should be do no harm. And I think there is a solution that pretty much works for everybody, including the neighbors, most importantly. And that would be to proceed with the plan as is with 3 modifications, 3 very simple modifications. One is to leave the parking exactly where it is. The parking is not a problem. There are 2 units. There are 2 parking spaces for each unit. Coastal will approve that. There is some parking and the lot ahead of it, but it's not needed to resolve the issue. So let's take parking off the table. It's not a problem. And let's look at the next floor up that's encroaching 15 feet into the required setback. But interestingly enough, that first floor up, right above the parking, is below the level of the adjacent eastern retaining wall. So it's not really blocking anybody's view. It's just living almost underground in relation to most of the terrace. So what I would ask is that we leave that part there where it is. However, the second and third floor get pulled back to the 30-foot line. So we're only using the second floor to move that one back 15 feet. The third floor is already back 15 feet. And then I think one of the big problems with this building is it's extremely high. I don't think we need a 12-foot high stairwell behind everything. That can be easily brought down to 8 feet high. And then there are 3 fins that are encroaching into the side and rear yard that are not code compliant, and those could be brought back to 18 inches. And in addition, to make up for what might be a lost floor space by pulling back the middle floor, those 15 feet, you could introduce another room in the garage facing the sidewalk next to the cars of that apartment that's being affected. And so with some minor tweaks that are within our coverage, within our portfolio, we could get a building that has 2 units, has all the parking it needs, and lines up primarily with the building right next to it, which, to be honest, was a huge shock to the neighborhood. When that building parachuted in, it was just like the Martians had landed. So what I'm thinking is that we're lining up the front of our building, the one that's essentially level with the floor space of the terrace, the height of the terrace. Pulling that second floor back would basically take care of everybody's problems with the setback issue. I'm still concerned about the height. I personally feel the third floor is too high, but that's an ARB discussion. That's not our discussion. I mean, it could be, but I don't think we need to act on it. So I think there's a solution here that pretty much solves most of the problems and is, like most compromises, maybe not ideal for everybody, but it is functional.
I like it.
I like it too. Thank God, Mario. We've got to really work for his reappointment. Well, I have a couple thoughts. I'm still in shock about a 30-foot front yard setback on substandard lots in R3 districts. I mean, I just find that absolutely extraordinary, given that the rest of the city is 20 feet. But that's another issue for another day. I think that if we don't approve this variance, and I like Mario's modifications, I don't know how the applicant feels about it, we will make this site unbuildable. And that would not be consistent with the finding. It would be consistent with the findings for a variance. I don't believe it's buildable. They can't do a single family house. And I think the parking issue unresolved, we don't know what Coastal's going to say about a duplex, makes it very complicated. And I can't support, for one thing, that is one of the findings of a variance, that basically you've taken away the use of the property by not doing it. And I think we will have done that because you could no longer build a single family house in R3. Excuse me.
No.
So those are my thoughts. And again, public parking across the street is not remotely an option. The Coastal Commission will never go for that. And I like Mario's solution.
Okay, Vice Chair Raskin, please.
Could we just briefly reopen the public hearing to ask the applicant what they think of this proposal?
That's a good idea.
I will do it, but I'm just going to tell you, I'm just going to highlight to the commission, at this point, this is up to us. And they've come to us and this is not about them, and I don't mean this specifically, but I've seen this commission do it a few different times. It's not very typical when we're in the middle of discussion, if we're adding conditions, to bring an applicant back up and say, are you okay with this? I mean, that's our job, is to make these tough decisions. But with that said, let's open the public hearing and hear what the applicant has to say. Please stay very focused on the request.
Hi, this is Michael Rahimi. And we kind of like the idea of Mario. And I think that there is, on the second floor, the way I see, if we want to do the setback on the second floor to 30 feet, the way it is that the staircase and that section to the elevator doesn't need to have that setback because it still is behind the drop behind of the retaining wall and is not going to have any impact. But the rest of it, we can bring it back. So that way we cannot, we don't have to change the staircase that leads upstairs and the elevator. So the second floor setback to 30 feet with a little bit like a L shape, that would be absolutely fine. To 30 feet that you're saying.
No, but how far up is it sticking up, that staircase? So what, the beauty of, I thought, of the solution that Commissioner Fonda Bernardi put out there was the first floor was at about the ground, as I understood it, was about the ground level of the house above. What you're saying is that will hurt your circuit, your access, and I'm wondering how much further up does that come? Is that a full floor?
Here, let's go to the, probably easier to see in the section.
Second,
you can see it here. So the first floor, the second floor is basically at the level of the first floor of the house. So the second floor would have the stair there.
So it would be the full height of your second level.
Which is still below their first floor.
It's more their utility type spaces, I believe, in there.
And their first floor has the setback 30 feet, so it doesn't have any impact.
Yeah, but okay. Well, I mean, there's an impact though if you're in the front yard. It blocks it. Am I understanding that properly? If you're standing out, okay. Let's hear from other commissioners.
Well, I mean, if we were told that it would not present an insurmountable problem, obviously there's going to be small tweaks and movements to adjust this change. But remember the stair, what we're trying to do is lower the roof of the first floor, not even lower it, leave it where it is. So someone standing at the top of the stairway going up to the terrace walkway could see over it. And so there's no blocking of view, meaning no one has been harmed by that. And I think most of the windows, if I'm not mistaken, of the building directly across from us are higher than our proposed first floor, if I'm not mistaken. So, in other words, it's not a killer here. It's
great. Well,
and if you can make up the space in the basement with a habitable room down there, it would help make that unit a little more balanced with the other quote major unit.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Fonda. I appreciate it. Go ahead, Vice Chair Raskin.
Yeah, I don't have anything else for the project applicant. I just wanted to bring the discussion back to us, if that's appropriate.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So if I like this compromise proposal, I think we're still going to have to articulate findings to support the variance. And
I just want to add, because this is an important point, there are no findings proposed for the development review permit either. So those, or the map, or the major mod, we would need, there are a whole series of findings that would be required that this commission make in the affirmative if you were interested in taking forward that action. Those are not before us. That's a many findings to articulate. We would recommend giving staff a chance after hearing the discussion to bring those back to you.
Okay.
Well,
Not tonight.
if I recall correctly, Mr. Metcher submitted some proposed variance findings, and I understand that the other entitlements would require findings as well. I hate to continue this further, but
I don't think there's an opportunity, there's no other way around it. Staff cannot create 30 pages of findings while we sit here.
Yeah.
I think that if we haven't articulated, or if you don't think we've given you enough direction yet, we can spend a little time on why we think there's a special circumstance. I think that the applicant has provided stuff for you to consider. Obviously, you're not going to utilize every word of it, but I think it gives some good basis for the arguments. I do think that there are some uniquenesses to this site just from the standpoint that I was going to.
Understood.
So are you comfortable with this? Because I mean, I was going to give you some examples of why I thought there could be some findings in there, and that it is a unique site just from the standpoint that it is busy from the standpoint, which is ironic. The photos that were shown today of the site showed the street very empty. I never see the street that empty. It's a very busy, a busy street. We're in a unique situation where there's a 30-foot easement or 30-foot setback on a site that 80% of the projects don't use. So that's unique. It's unfortunate that one gentleman decided to build, I don't say unfortunate, it's just unique that only one building seems to meet those 30 feet. So I find that a very unique situation in the area, as well as, I know it's site specific.
Yeah, if I might just clarify that one piece, that is because all of the rest of the properties are legal non-conforming at this moment. Any other property that would actually, get to the demolition stage and the reconstruction stage will be subject to this 30-foot setback. So, I mean, that's the way the zoning ordinance is written now. So that is perhaps another reasoning would be a little bit more robust, because again, any other property along that site that does propose a full tear down will have to be subject to that 30-foot rule.
Right, and most likely why nobody's going to propose a tear down, and that we'll be stuck with the same configuration for a long time.
Can I say something?
Every time I speak, you want to speak over me. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No.
Are you finished?
I am now.
Go ahead. I just want to say once again that I think that we need to relook at the 30-foot setback and on the substandard lots.
Okay, staff, do you need to hear more from us on what the findings are if we ask you to?
Can we just take a moment to confer?
Okay.
Because
so at this
just
moment,
to clarify, there are four permits, and they each have multiple findings, and they are not made because they were all contingent on the variance, right? And so that we would want to make sure that the record's very clear as to what this commission's basing its decision on.
We still do need a variance.
I understand that the findings are not drafted. They're not drafted for the development review permit, the variance in the affirmative, the vesting tentative map, the major modification. Those are all applications before you, as well as the variance.
And so if we could also please get a clarification of the proposed conditions that you would be attaching in order to just what conditions you would like to place on the project in order to make it palatable for you, right? So if you could re-articulate those two, that would be helpful.
I can give you my sense of what those would be. One is to pull back the second floor of the building to the 30-foot line.
with the exception of that stair.
Well, the stair is fine because the stair is still, it doesn't need to go all the way up, but it could, but it can go up without being inside of a stairwell. I mean, that's, that the roof deck that is being created by pulling back that story have an open rail. It can be glass, but it has to be visually penetratable. And that the tower of the stairwell and elevator be lowered to 8 feet tall instead of the current 12 feet. And the last point is that there are these 3 fins that stick into the side and rear setback they should be reduced to 18 inches.
Just wanted to clarify, so that staircase that you say can have an open, that is an internal staircase that connects the ground floor
Connects the
to
garage.
that one? No. It's the ground floor.
Oh, yeah, that one.
So that will
unchanged.
need to be allowed to encroach into the 30-foot front yard setback. It
No,
can't
no.
be an open staircase.
Wait, I'm sorry. Are you talking about the stair in the side yard?
So they, I think, are asking that this staircase in this corner, this upper left-hand corner, be allowed to continue to project into the 30-foot front yard setback, where the rest of the building would have to comply.
Well-
So I'm just letting you know that that staircase is an internal connection between the first floor and the second floor. So if you're allowing them to have that staircase there still, it would have to be, that's why they wanted the L shape.
The L shape.
The L shape of the the allowance of the variance, where the bedroom and that walk-in.
I guess what I'm saying is you could go down that stair to the intermediate landing and you could have a door at that intermediate landing so that you wouldn't need to intrude into. We're trying to clear the sign line side.
I know, yeah. I just think that the staircase, which is like essentially right here, will need to be allowed into that 30-foot front yard setback.
Well, I'd like to have it cleared out so that you can see over it. That's the whole point of being able to see over it. If we're letting the staircase intrude, we're losing the whole point of the exercise.
Yeah, I just don't know if it's like the head clearance, if you can just cut that so you can still see above it. Just wanted to point that out because it's essentially right here. That's the staircase. So which leads into the rest of the unit.
I guess what I'm saying is if I have to draw it out and make it work, I will do that. But there's a very intricate building and it's very well designed. It's just whole Rubik's Cube with all these pieces. And they can certainly design a staircase.
Sure, I just want to be clear what
that
is
doesn't
allowed
intrude.
of that second floor, what is allowed to project into.
And I think there's a disconnect between what we're hoping for, which is a clear view, and what they need, which is they need a block
But
there.
I'm telling you, you can get that
Okay.
clear view. I can guarantee that.
Okay, but then that's fine. I hope we can, but what we can't say is, okay, you can have the L shape, because then that gives them the ability to block.
No, we don't want the L shape.
Okay.
We want it.
Great. Now I'm really comfortable. Thank you, Ross, because I was not able to articulate that. So now we've given you what we believe the conditions are. We understand you have to write a whole series of findings.
So this commission, based on the discussion that has occurred, including review of the entire record that's before you, all of the comments from the applicant, members of the public, the applicant's submittal included draft findings that they proposed for all 4 permits. That's all in the record. You've heard the testimony. I would like just a moment to confer to make sure we have our notes are matching. We're not going to present that all this evening, but we can take that and draft findings based on this discussion as you're referencing the whole of the record in front of you. Can you just give us one moment to do that?
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask for a 5-minute continuance. We're going to put this on hold for 5 minutes and come back. I have 8:47, so at 8:55, which is a little more than 5 minutes. Okay, I'm going to call this back to order. If there was asked to give us your comments.
Yeah, staff just wanted to confirm that ultimately the findings that are needed for the development review permit, the major modification, and the vesting tentative map, the one finding we couldn't make was, is this consistent with code? And because we were recommending denial of the variance, that's why that single finding could be made, which triggered the denial of the other ones. So we feel like if the variance can be made in the approval, all the rest of the findings can be made for the 3 other entitlements. As far as the variance, it seems, if we are hearing you correctly, kind of the reasoning for now modifying the variance, but ultimately giving some level of approval, was to accommodate the ability to park the site appropriately. As the full first floor, that's actually like the living space floor, the height of that would not intrude on the walk street, as that kind of aligns with the top of the stairs of the walk street. And then anything above that floor, so that'd be the true second and third floor, would have to comply with the 30-foot front yard. So that was the reasonings for the two.
That is substantially correct. And I think the foundation of this is that, one, it is a substandard site, hard to park, and two, one of the criteria is if there's unique geology, and in this case there is unique geology. There's a 13-foot high retaining wall in the back of our lot. So standing on those 2 legs, you can build the edifice
That's
of
helpful.
compliance.
Yes.
You have to bear with us, staff is dialoguing. Yes, if you want to chime in.
Well, while staff is conferring, I will make one point for the record. I'm concerned that if we were to apply development standards that would make it infeasible to build less than 2 units, that we would run into trouble with Government Code Section 65852.21B2A. I realize that's not relevant to the variance findings, but wanted to say that for the record.
Thank you.
Or maybe it is relevant to the variance findings.
Yeah, I think
yeah. It's a section in SB 9 that says that you can't apply development standards that would preclude the development of less than 2 units on a residential site. SB 9, it was written to apply to R1 sites, but I think that my position is that it applies to sites that are functionally R1 if there are site constraints that make it impossible to build more than 1 unit.
And our local SB 9 ordinance that the commission saw and that was ultimately adopted by City Council reflects that same opinion, that if there are development standards that precludes it to 1, it would instead be treated like it was R1 and be applicable to SB 9. So yes.
Okay.
Okay, so the question is next steps. We typically do not like to approve projects without seeing the full STOAs or the findings, so I'm assuming our only next step is a continuance here.
So based on that, that's correct. That's generally our practice. So our staff's recommendation would be to continue this so that we may bring the draft STOA that reflects this commission's intent and action. We would not reopen the public hearing.
Great. Can we get a motion on that, please?
So moved.
Second, but can I ask what the timing would be?
At the next meeting of the commission, which would be August 16th.
Thank you.
So we have a motion from
Raskin and seconded by Lambert.
Thank you. Ready for roll call? Commissioner Fonda Bernardi.
Yes.
Commissioner Lambert.
Yes.
Vice Chair Raskin.
Yes.
Commissioner Tulkin.
Yes.
Chairperson Reese.
Yes. Okay, this is continued until our next hearing. Thank you much for everyone's participation. We appreciate it. And we'll see you at the next hearing.
Will we? Open the public hearing.
You're welcome to come to any hearing you'd like, sir. That's all I was saying. Okay? We are moving back to items 12, which we have nothing under 12. We have nothing under 13. 14, if there are any discussion items that people want to put on for future. Not seeing any, then we're in a joint adjournment, and it is 9:04, and we are adjourned. Thank you very much.